Okay, if we're live, then I should luckily. Okay, we were waiting for the deputy mayor, but we're going to see if he can get on. In the meantime, just before we start the next item, I'd like to start this portion of the meeting by mentioning that last Friday, the Governor General of Canada, Her Excellency the Right Honourable Julie Payette, appointed Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer to the Order of Canada. And I guess we haven't had a lot of good news lately, so I just want to mention this. The impact of their work is obvious both on the world stage in their ice dance achievements, but also their contributions to the skating community here at in our municipality, Middlesex Centre. Their dedication, their hard work, and their perseverance in bumpy times has been inspirational to all of us. They're role models, and they are truly deserving of this recognition. So on behalf of our municipality, I'd like to offer congratulations to the both of you on your appointment to the Order of Canada. I don't think that we've got the Deputy Mayor just yet. Is Matt there? Matt's here. I will introduce then Matt Alexander. We have a presentation from WSP Consultants on the Middlesex Centre Official Plan Review. Matt, if you would like to go ahead with your presentation.
Good evening. Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members of Council, for taking the time to go through this exercise with us. There we are. We have the presentation being shared now. So we can start on the main screen. And maybe we'll just click to the next slide, and then I can get into sort of the introduction and what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So my name is Matt Alexander. I'm the project manager from WSP Canada on the Municipality of Middlesex Centre Official Plan Review project. I'm also joined by my colleague Mishi McCloskey, who is the engagement lead on the project and a primary planner on the project. On the municipal side of things, our project team consists of Michael DeLulo, Heather Capron, and Marian Francis Cabral, who I'm sure you are familiar with. Let's go to the next slide. So this isn't your typical presentation to council where I talk a lot and then you have some questions or some comments, and then we just move on. This is something of a workshop. And the purpose of this workshop is to provide an overview of the official plan review and the project and the processes, just to give you a bit of an update of how things are going. Also to review and discuss key policy issues and opportunities, which we have heard throughout this process, and to highlight some of the next steps and opportunities for involvement in the project. And in that second section, number 2, I'm going to be providing you with some information and then asking for some feedback. And then we'll go on to sort of a second batch of information. We're going to be working through sort of the themes of our discussion papers. So we're hoping for a little bit more of a back and forth than what you might typically see at a regular council meeting. Let's go to the next slide. So here's our agenda. We'll provide the overview. Mishi will speak to some of our public engagement efforts and outcomes. And then we will speak to key issues and opportunities and have a little bit of discussion, which I just explained. And then we'll cover conclusion and next steps. Next slide. All right, and we can go to the next one. So we talked about this a little bit at the Section 26 meeting. I wanted to go over it again just for the sake of anybody who is watching or attending and wasn't there last time. So the purpose of the official plan is to provide guidance on the long-term management of growth and change throughout the municipality. It includes goals, objectives, and policies relating to land use, agricultural areas, settlement areas, natural areas, and economic, social, and servicing matters. It covers a lot of what the municipality manages, as well as what private homeowners and business owners and landowners can do with their lands. Next slide, please. And we're undertaking this review of the official plan because it's a few years old now and things have changed in Middlesex Center. Things have also changed in a policy context. So we need to update the official plan to ensure that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement, which was released with new policies this year, as well as the County of Middlesex official plan, which is a little bit more current than the current Middlesex Center official plan, and should be undertaking some updates soon. So we want to be in line with that as well, and we need to guide growth and change over the next 25 years. So it's always important to keep looking at that and going back to it over time. Next slide, please. Here's an outline of where we are. So on the left, we have already undertaken our project initiation meeting. We've submitted a communications and engagement strategy. We've coordinated with your strategic plan consultants on a number of issues. We held the Section 26 Council meeting, which was our introduction of the project to council and to the public. And we participated in a public survey to get a sense of what the residents feel like about development and change and growth in the municipality. So now we're into phase 2, which began with our background review, the stakeholder advisory committee and technical advisory committee meetings, pre-consultation meeting, discussion with the county and representatives from the province, and policy and vision workshops. So we had a visioning workshop with members of the public, and we have this policy workshop with council tonight. We've also drafted discussion papers, which essentially lay out the main issues that are facing Middlesex Center and summarize some of the direction that comes from new documents that have been prepared and released since the official plan came into effect. And a draft document alignment review. So that's sort of something that's going on in the background where we're taking a look at different documents and making sure that we're consistent across them. After this meeting, we will be, I guess I'll get to the next steps later on, but we'll be finalizing those discussion papers and then moving into phase 3 and phase 4 next year. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand this off to Mishi McCloskey to discuss the public engagement updates.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, and thank you for tuning into the presentation. As Matt mentioned, my name is Misha McCloskey. I'm the engagement lead on the project. So just to recap, I know Matt mentioned a few of these initiatives in the previous slide, but just to kind of run through. So just to build on the vision survey, so that was done in partnership with the strategic plan consultant, and it was also to get feedback on the municipal budget. So, you know, that went out in the summer and we got tons of feedback, a great initiative for all three initiatives part of the joint project. We also established a stakeholder advisory committee. We've already had that meeting, received some really good initial feedback that helped inform the vision workshop. The vision workshop, we had over 40 attendees, or sorry, 40 people sign up and over 20 attendees. We broke out into groups and discussed themes like agriculture and economic development. And really there was a strong agricultural theme that emerged from that workshop that we would like to carry forward, you know, in developing the vision for the municipality. And here we are in the council workshop. So just to give a quick recap on that survey that we did. So for this particular question, there were over 450 responses to this question. And this is just to give you an idea of some of the themes that emerged as priorities. So parks, trails, and recreation was a very prominent theme. The larger the circle, basically the more prominent. So we were really happy to work with, the strategic plan review consultant, and really, it was really a joint effort, and really appreciate the collaborative effort on that initiative. So with that, I think we're going to jump into the discussion papers, so I'm going to hand that back to Matt, and we're going to get into a little bit more into the the key issues and opportunities that were discussed at these different engagement initiatives, and really touch upon the key topics. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Mishi. We can go right into the next slide. So you saw some of those main ideas and themes that came up through the public consultation. Those all sort of fit into the 5 general themes of the discussion papers that we have drafted, and which we're in the process of revising and finalizing. And the discussion paper topics provide a really good framework for talking about how growth and everything occurs over the next 25 years, and the main thrust of the official plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few points on each of these topics: infrastructure, natural heritage, provincial and general policy, economic diversification, and growth management. And after each set of bullet points, I'm going to ask for your input on what you feel are the priorities related to that subject matter. And I hope that we can have a little bit of a discussion for each of these topics. But of course, watching the time, we're gonna have to move quick. So let's go to the next slide, and we can talk about infrastructure. So some of the things that we've gathered from reviewing existing reports and through our consultation efforts are that the key issues and opportunities related to infrastructure include capacity. So that's water, sewer capacity, also road capacity. So when we see new development taking place, do the roads have capacity to accommodate that new development, as well as any rural traffic that might already be in place? So farm equipment, transport trucks, school buses. So it's important to review the capacity and know where opportunities are in that regard. Going back to water and sewer, we have to talk about servicing hierarchy policies. And the county provides some direction on that, but the municipality also has an opportunity to talk about how new development should be serviced depending on where it's located and what's available. Stormwater management is another important topic because we know there's been the stormwater management master plan exercises that have taken place. But again, it comes down to establishing conditions for development and the process for ensuring good stormwater management. And that all wades into subdivision design requirements. Let's go to the next slide. So some of the major policy updates on this theme: existing and planned infrastructure capacity of settlement areas needs to be confirmed so that we can identify how much new development might be permitted or facilitated in those areas. We'll need to update servicing policies for consistency with the PPS and conformity with the county official plan. Sorry, PPS is the provincial policy statement, which is the provincial direction on land use planning. We need to encourage sustainable stormwater management. And one of the things that we heard from our technical advisory committee was an interest in green stormwater management. So things like bioswales and vegetated buffers. And we'll also be reviewing subdivision design requirements and considering the county's cycling strategy, because of course, safe cycling infrastructure is a piece of infrastructure. It could also be a tourism driver. So it's an interesting, multifaceted element. So let's go to the next slide. So now this is the discussion part. And our question to council, because I'm sure you all receive comments and calls and questions from your constituents on a regular basis. Do you have thoughts about infrastructure, or what are you hearing about infrastructure priorities from residents, or any thoughts that you might have on those specific issues? And do you have any comments that you'd like us to consider when reviewing the official plan? Unfortunately, the video is fairly small for me to be able to see hands being raised or anything like that. So I might leave it to the folks in the room to moderate who would like to speak. But this is intended to be sort of an open discussion. And so through you, Mayor, if anybody would like to speak, we will be taking notes. And I guess I'll just open the floor.
Okay, I'm happy to help with that part of it. I'll just turn it over then. Which councillor would like to start the discussion? And Councillor Heffernan has put up her hand.
Great, thank you.
Through the mayor to Matt. So there's several different things in the infrastructure line. For example, subdivision design. We have a lot of people who speed on the straightaways in some of the subdivisions. So it would be maybe designed so that for calming already built in, calming traffic policies already built in, sort of. The settlement areas and capacity kind of go hand in hand. And I think we're at capacity as far as infrastructure such as stormwater and sewage and water in Ilderton. And I'm not sure if this is the place to go, but to expand any further, we would have to take away some prime agricultural land, which has already lost about 300 to 400 acres in the last 20, 25 years. Schools, that's another thing. I don't think that falls under the this particular category, but we need to have more cooperation with the school board so that students don't learn partway through the year where they're going to go and if there's a change. And definitely in Ilderton for sure, it's already at capacity, over capacity, and yet they're still building. And for cycling, I've always thought that if and when a road is redone by the county, if they would pave the shoulders, this section here from Coldstream Side Road up to Egremont, I guess, has got paved shoulders, and there's all kinds of, and also a reduced speed limit to 50 all the way. And there's all kinds of people walking and cycling there. And most of us just have the gravel shoulders and so that basically the cyclists have to go on the pavement, and pretty scary if cars are going by at 90. So that's the thoughts I've had on this section.
Thank you very much. The road speed in subdivisions is something that we hadn't heard yet, and I think there is an opportunity there to put some criteria or conditions in the official plan related to that. And the school planning will definitely keep that in mind as well. Like you said, it's not exactly the infrastructure piece, but it's an important component when considering new development. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts or questions?
Councillor Arts.
Through your mayor to Matt, whenever we do all this subdivision stuff and all this building, everyone talks about sustainable and green, and people use it for what they want and ignore it for when they don't want it. Because the homes, if we could build them a little more normal and get away from the executive homes, you could get maybe more homes in a subdivision or make it more realistic for someone to buy. Like I've said, we're hypocritical. We pick and choose what we want to be green and what we want to be sustainable. And I think we have to do a better effort at making maybe the houses a little tighter or a little smaller so that our younger population can actually afford to buy a home. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's that speaks right to talking about a range and mix of housing types, because you're right, if it's all of one type, it can become prohibitive for folks of different income levels or preferences. So that's a really good comment. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Shipley.
Through the mayor to Matt, I'm just looking for some clarification, Matt.
Mhm.
I'm looking for clarification in regards to provincial policy. I'm assuming that's where you have to put land for future development. How do you come up with that figure? Like, and what do we, like, what's it based on? Previous growth or future growth? And how do you decide how much land you have to set aside for that?
That's a really good question. We're working with Watson and Associates as a subconsultant on this project, and they are working on the land needs calculations and population growth and employment growth scenarios looking forward. And so you'll find a more detailed explanation in their reports. But in general, what we do is we look at the population that's projected for the area over time, and then sort out what's the likely household structure that relates to that population. And that gives us an estimate of the number of housing units that might be required over time. Then there's another kind of projection and calculation about what the demand for different types of housing units will be, whether it's single detached homes, townhouses, apartments, or any other type of housing type. Then another set of calculations related to how much land is required to accommodate that mix, that projected mix of housing types. And there can be another level of investigation as to what it already exists in the settlement areas as far as vacant lands that are identified for residential development. And then once you've sort of done all of that, you can start to talk about how much additional land might be required to add to that settlement area. And so that's, as you can imagine, a lengthy process of sorting things out. And Watson is well underway on that, and will be able to provide a bit more. I think later in the process, we'll be able to give you a more concrete idea of what might be required, and whether any expansions are justified. But that's essentially, that's sort of the Coles notes. It's a lot of math and a lot of projections, but we do consider sort of past uptake and of different housing types in order to determine what that mix might be. And if it seems like the demand is all going to be for single detached homes, that's going to take up a lot more room than if there's more demand for townhouses, for example, or even semis. So there's a lot of factors to consider, and we will be presenting those findings in more detail later on in the process. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does actually. Thanks very much.
Okay, great. If there are no other comments on this topic, then we might want to move along to the next one. Any final thoughts on infrastructure?
I just have one more hand.
Okay.
Yes, through the mayor to Matt. Speaking of infrastructure, I know where I come from, Ward 5 there, we've been at a bit of a freeze. This official plan is probably welcoming over there. Speaking of infrastructure, because I understand that provincial policy has stated in the past that they would want to have full services.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've looked at the area now to recognize that we don't have real easy opportunities for full services. Has there been any talk with the provincial policy statement as a second option? I mean, we've got a lot of septic systems happening over there. We're on perfect ground for it, but I know at one time they kind of put it across the province that that can't be done. So a lot of the property that's already in the settlement area has been froze.
Mm-hmm.
think it's special policy they've got on it of some sort, just to wait and see what we're going to do in the future. So I'm curious to if there has been any talk of that, or if you're aware of any with the provincial policy ideas. That's going to be a possibility if nothing else works.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mentioned on the earlier slide about servicing hierarchy, and you hit it on that other option. So there's full municipal services is the preference, full municipal services within settlement areas. And then the provincial policy statement says that the next preference down is a private communal service. And what that essentially is developer wants to build a few houses. They need to be able to provide the services for those units specifically. And it's basically a small scale sewage treatment plant. And then the third preference is for private individual services. And so looking at the policies, we would want to ensure that if a private communal system was being proposed, that the municipality is comfortable with the conditions under which that would be approved. Because what you don't want to end up with is a private sewage treatment facility that ends up being abandoned by the developer over time, or maybe isn't being maintained to the standard that you would need it to be. Because if there is a failure of that system, or if it's not being kept up, or if the corporate owner of that abandons it, then that has impacts for those residents. And what tends to happen is that people then look to the municipality, or they look to the county or the province to take on that service. And that can be an unanticipated expense, as you can imagine, and a potential health risk. So, to respond to that, in those areas where there are not municipal services and where private individual services are difficult or not possible to provide, then there is potentially a third option, which is the private communal service, but there's pros and cons there too. So we talk about it a little bit in the discussion paper, and we will be sort of fleshing that out a little, and following our finalization of that is our policy options report, where we'll talk about some of the options that are available related to that. So good comments. I understand the interest in being able to facilitate a little bit more development in some of these areas, but there are those servicing constraints that need to be addressed. Thank you for that.
I'm just going to ask if Deputy Mayor Brennan wants to make a comment on infrastructure.
Sure.
Yeah, just through you, Madam Mayor. I guess I struggle with if we can get something in an official plan that dictates the type of housing that goes into subdivisions. And secondly, how stringent is the PPS on the amount of land we have to have available? Can we vary from that numbers that are in the PPS? I know we can be more restrictive but not less restrictive in things, but can we scale back the amount of land we have to have in that?
Thank you for that. We can, so to address the first point, we can certainly recommend some policies that would ensure a mix, or direct that a certain mix of housing types is required within plans of subdivision, and that has mixed outcomes. Some developers are happy to do what they can to get an approval, and others may ask for an amendment so that they don't have to build higher density that maybe they have some thoughts on. But I think we can definitely look at doing something like that. On the second point, the PPS is pretty clear and stringent on essentially you have to be able to provide a certain amount of land to accommodate demand over the next 20 years or 25 years. What that works out to depends on the growth management work that Watson is doing that I spoke to earlier. So if we're able to accommodate more of that projected growth within the existing settlement area by permitting slightly higher densities in existing neighborhoods, for example, then that would reduce the amount of land that would need to be added later on. If that, hopefully that sort of gives you an idea of the give and take there. But if it looks like the only development that might happen are, estate lots or large lot singles, then that's what tends to eat up more land. But the PPS is more about, if you have your projections for the next 25 years, you need to be able to accommodate that somehow. And so we would need to demonstrate how that gets accommodated. And if we're not expanding settlement areas to do it, then there needs to be some other policy element that says that it will be accommodated through intensification. Does that help? Is that
Yeah.
really clear?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Matt, I'm not sure, but I think that some of the questions that we're asking, for example, I wanted to go on and build off the question that the deputy mayor asked, but that really is a growth management question. And if you think I understand your slides properly, I should hold off till Watson comes to do their presentation.
Yes, so Watson won't be here tonight, but we do have that section in this discussion.
Yeah.
So we can hold off on that until a little later on.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. But that's the thing about infrastructure. It really it touches just about everything. So let's move on to the next section. So on natural heritage and hazards, one of the things that we heard from the public, from our stakeholder advisory committee, was a lot of appreciation for the natural heritage features in the municipality. Now the direction from the provincial policy and from conservation authorities and the county is that natural heritage systems should be the approach when we're talking about conserving these features. And what that means is not just identifying sort of clusters of woodlots or wetlands and that kind of thing, but looking at how they're connected to each other and how we can provide linkages between them, because we all know that animals and water don't really care about lot lines or roads necessarily. So we have to think about how to provide linkages between features. It's also, of course, very important to look at hazard lands and identify floodplains and flood-prone areas, as well as anywhere where there's erosion hazards, slumpage, or not landslide, I guess landslide hazards and that kind of thing. And we need policies that ensure that we're not putting sensitive or vulnerable development within those hazard lands. And there's a relationship to agriculture that needs to be considered, because what we find in a lot of rural communities is there's some apprehension about adopting policies that protect natural heritage features that are adjacent to or on farmland, because there's an expectation that the farm will be able to continue to operate. And we'll probably get into it more in the policy options piece, but just to put it out there right now, if there is sort of a protection designation that happens to go over farmland at the same time, the farming is permitted to continue. So I just wanted to sort of address that right off the bat. The existing agricultural operation is is definitely permitted to continue on. Let's go to the next slide. And so some of those major policy updates for this are to ensure that there's conformity with the source water protection policies. So that's around your wellhead protection areas and your vulnerable aquifer areas. Further protection of forest cover. So one of the things that we heard about was wanting to see improvement on forest cover, woodlots, trees, that sort of thing, where it's possible. A systems-based approach to the natural heritage system, as I mentioned, and ensuring that all the mapping is up to date. So often what happens is maybe a wetland has dried up over time, or an unprotected woodlot has been cut down, and so we don't necessarily have to continue to protect that area. And through this process, we'll be updating the mapping as much as possible. And like I mentioned, the balance between agricultural areas and the natural heritage system. Let's move on to the next slide. So again, let's see if you have any comments about natural heritage and hazards, and whether you see any good opportunities that that we can identify or improve on, I guess, in the official plan related to these issues. Any thoughts from council?
All righty. Any questions on that list that we had there, or thoughts, input? Yes, Councillor Arts.
Through your through your mayor to Matt, the forest cover, like, I'm a farmer. I admit we've done some stuff in the past that probably wasn't too nice, but we've planted some trees back. But I asked the conservation authority person once, says, how come that person got to take the bush down? I says, couldn't you stop them? And they said, not really. We could advise them not to. Like, who does? Does anyone have the authority to stop people from taking down forest cover? Like, who is it though? Because it didn't seem to be the conservation authority.
That's a good question. So the Conservation Authority has its mandate, and for the most part, it's going to be focused on those areas that have been identified as significant, and that has sort of a certain meaning in the provincial context. So things like a tree line or a hedgerow on a property might not be deemed significant, and therefore might not be within the purview of the Conservation Authority. However, the municipality does have the authority to pass a tree cutting bylaw, for example. And that might establish certain criteria, like the requirement for a permit if somebody wants to cut down a tree that's greater than so many centimeters thick. And that's an extra layer of administration. So there's a lot of considerations about whether you do a bylaw like that and what the parameters of it might be, and also where it might apply. So a lot of municipalities are hesitant to put too many limits on agricultural uses. So you don't apply site plan control except in certain circumstances on farmland, or there might be other things that you sort of don't worry too much about because it's agricultural and you want to support that agricultural use. But I think if we can definitely look at what kind of policies we might want to see related to, hedgerows along roadways, for instance, can be really good at reducing dust and snow drifts. So they have definite benefits that go beyond the specific property. So I think we can definitely look at that and see what sort of policies we might be able to do or recommend around that sort of thing. But that's a really good point. We can also do a fair bit, like, you know, the official plan is a big document, and there tend to be preamble or explanation of things. And so we can try to clarify who's responsible for certain things in the text of the official plan, even if it doesn't specifically provide direction or policy. It can be a helpful document for people that way as well.
I'm just going to jump in for 1 second. That's a conversation you may want to touch base with the county, because the county forester acts on behalf of our constituent municipalities in concert with the conservation authorities. There is a map of significant woodlots and lands in our municipality. And even at the municipal level, we have had requests for building permits that have touched on the tree topic, and those individuals have been made to replant. And there's a ratio that, I don't know, 3 to 1. If you cut one, you plant three additional trees. But anyways, that might be something to, I don't know, cross-reference so that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other yes, Councillor Scott.
Yes, through the mayor to Matt, under, I guess, natural heritage and hazards, I've heard lately from a couple residents about accessing rivers, you know, doing in some of those sports. I noticed we got trails and parks and stuff like that. I don't know whether that falls under official plan amendment stuff, but it might be something that we'd want to look at in the future, because it seems to become more and more popular with people wanting to canoe down. I'm using the Thames River that goes through there for us. There's been some comments on they haven't got a safe spot to maybe get launched in there and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if that's something that is considered at this time or not, but just threw it out there.
Thank you very much. That is a really good, that's a really good thought. A lot of the time we think about ground related activities, but I think, you know, when you're not located on a lake or something, it's easy to forget that there's a lot of other opportunities for recreation within waterways. And so we may look at those opportunities. There are parkland policies within the official plan, and policies related to the acquisition of land for recreational uses. So there might be an opportunity there to sort of direct some consideration of access to waterways. So that's a really good thought. Thank you.
Just quickly, John, anything you want to add to this topic of natural heritage?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, I don't see any more hands on that natural heritage slide if you want to continue.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next slide. So our discussion paper number 4 is sort of a very broad topic, which is general policy. Our key issues and opportunities here are related to consistency and consolidation of policies so that we're eliminating some redundancy that might occur, but also making sure that we're implementing the policy direction from the province and the county. Agriculture-related and on-farm diversified uses are extremely important to consider in rural communities because these provide additional opportunities for income on farms and also support the agricultural economy throughout the municipality. So it's not just you know, a corner stand or a roadside stand. It's something a little bit more involved, and it can be mutually supportive between different farms. We talked a little bit about diversification of housing options already, and that is something that we're definitely focused on. And surplus farm residence severances. This is something that comes up just about everywhere, and there are a lot of different approaches that can be taken with this. And so I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts on that. And village vitality. One of the things that we see in amalgamated municipalities is a lot of desire to support and grow the communities that already exist. support those local businesses and main streets from the former municipalities. And it really does help to provide a nice sense of identity, but also gives people a nearby option for shopping and for employment. And so it's an important consideration. And we'll also talk a little bit about the economic diversification and growth management papers that Watson is working on. Let's go to the next slide. Our major policy updates in this regard are to update policy definitions and the official plan amendments that have taken place over time. So we may end up consolidating some of those and clarifying some definitions, updating policies. We will update the terminology around farming practices to bring them up to date with current terminology and sort of themes that we see. We'd also like to increase affordability and availability of housing. That's something that we've heard from our stakeholder advisory committee, and to provide some clarity and direction around those issues. We talked a little bit about surplus farm residents severances and opportunities to provide more direction there. And of course, enhancing, celebrating, and promoting village vitality. And that was, again, something we heard from our stakeholders. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of work from Watson that we wanted to talk about. And this has to do with economic diversification. This was a priority that Council had identified in the request for proposals on this official plan amendment, and it is a key important topic for an official plan because it identifies what you can do with your land, but it can also make it easier to do the sort of things that maybe there's a missing element. So Watson's looked at the share of employment within the municipality and identified that within the municipality, there's a greater share of employment related to agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting relative to the province. So that's about 13.8% of jobs. Construction represents about 10% of jobs. Manufacturing is about 10%. Education is 9.6%. And healthcare and social assistance is about 8.4%. And so you can see that there's a strong agricultural sector, as you would imagine, and a relatively high share related to construction and manufacturing. But when we talk about diversification, we maybe want to see a bit of a shift there. So let's go to the next slide. So some strategies or opportunities for promoting economic growth and competitiveness would be related to promoting village centers and settlement commercial areas, so that people aren't necessarily going all the way to London to do their shopping. A focus on tourism can help, and we touched on that a little bit with cycling, and I would say with any water-based recreation as well. And promoting the county and the municipality's agricultural industry, so that new businesses that are new agriculture-related businesses might choose Middlesex Center, and providing a flexibility and nimbleness. One of the things that happens sometimes is we get very narrow in our definitions of what can be permitted, and that means if somebody has a good idea that works, they need to go through maybe an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment and jump through a bunch of hoops to make it happen. So we'll be looking for opportunities to provide a little bit more flexibility while addressing any concerns that might come up. Let's go to the next slide. This is a graphic that they put together to give you an idea of the factors related to population, employment growth, and growth management within the municipality. And of course, all of, we've touched on a lot of this in the discussion already, but you've got your land use planning, which sets out how the land can be used and where, the infrastructure that facilitates that with servicing and with movement and everything else. Demographics is looking at who's here already and who do we expect in the future. The environment and health is extremely important because that makes a place desirable. And the economics, is it financially feasible to achieve some of these things? And so it's, Watson are the economists who deal with this all the time. WSP, myself in particular, I'm pretty focused on the land use planning with a little bit of the environment and demographic stuff. So I do encourage you to take a look at their draft discussion papers if you get a chance. Let's go to the next slide. And so with growth management objectives, we and Watson are looking at the key elements of a healthy and complete community that really goes to desirability and attracting people to the area. Providing a range of housing options, including affordability and attainability. Attainability being sort of what's desirable, that might be missing. Residential intensification is important, particularly when we're talking about village vitality or making use of existing services and trying to avoid going into the agricultural areas. Planning for older generations is extremely important, especially lately. We've been seeing a lot of interest in new seniors-oriented development, which often tends to be a little higher density because of sometimes the need to be accessible. So if it's low density, you end up with bungalows, which you don't have steps going up into them, but they take up more land, and so they become more expensive. But higher density seniors-oriented apartments can be feasible because you have elevators to provide accessibility, and you can provide the density that makes it a little bit more affordable. Protecting what's valuable, so identifying the highest priorities within the municipality, protecting and conserving those, and attracting talent. So that's bringing in job makers, the kind of innovation that drives new employment and new economic activity, and again, helps make things more desirable. Let's go to the next slide. So this sort of covered a lot, and it's a bit of a grab bag. So essentially, if there's anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't already talked about, this is the opportunity. But specifically, thinking about village centers and accommodating, that mix of residential and retail and other employment or economic activity. Do you have any thoughts about that, or any other sort of general policy elements that you'd like to discuss that maybe you've been hearing about?
I've got a question for you on that one.
Sure.
The question is, how do we feel the municipalities' village centers should evolve? So we have a vision that kind of reflects the idea of small town feel, sense of place, meeting spots, and so forth. But then, I'm referring to our last meeting, we have planning applications that come before us and say, but we want drive-throughs. We're going, and how is that consistent with our vision, the plan we have, and sort of the reality of what gets presented to us? I mean, our desire, our vision, our wishes, our thoughts and ideas, even insofar as, you talked about the growth cycle, how much land you need. Well, if it's all going to be estate lots and so on, you're going to need more land. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about more affordable housing since the last 4 years, or since the last time we did this even. Yet, what sells? Well, people want single family homes. There's a lot of talk about diversity housing stock and so forth. But the reality of it is I noted here is your comment was, well, if the preference is for this and if the preference is for that, based on market needs, it seems like a big circular argument to me at times.
Mhm.
Can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you. That's a good comments and good question. And it's something that I've brought up with Watson as well. If we're talking about preferences, how do we identify what the preferences are within a municipality if the options have always been limited? And that's where it comes down to looking at the need as well. So that's where the demographics come in. And through the official plan, we can play a little bit with the language. So some places you'll see policies that say, the municipality encourages affordable development. But encouraging isn't really an enforceable standard. So instead, what I try to encourage is policies that facilitate or just outright permit certain densities or types of housing that maybe haven't been permitted as of yet. And it doesn't mean that blocks are going to get torn down the following week and replaced with townhouses, but it provides that opportunity. So if the market does decide that semi-detached homes or a few townhouses will sell in a town center, you reduce the barriers to providing that. It's true that sometimes developers come in and they have an idea, they have a business case essentially that they work off of. So a commercial developer who wants to build a restaurant has decided that a drive-through is the thing that's going to make that feasible. And that's based on their market research. It's not necessarily based on what the vision for that area is. And if there's no policies that would prevent that sort of thing, then municipalities in a tough spot because they don't have that policy backing to refuse an application like that. And so it's important, and one of the things that we'll be looking at is clarifying that vision through policy and ensuring that there's a consistency between sort of those high-level statements that you tend to have at the beginning of the official plan and the operational policies that are deeper in the document. Sometimes there's a disconnect there, or there's certain roadblocks in the way to achieving that vision. And I always try to identify what those roadblocks might be, and then I bring them to the municipality and say, is this something really important, or is it something that we can try to cover off in other ways so that if someone wants to build more affordable or somewhat higher density, and I'm not talking high rises, I'm talking 2 or 3 stories, maybe a townhouse or semi-detached homes, and then go from there. So if that's what council likes to see or would like to see in the policy, then we can definitely make those recommendations and do the driving on this. It might mean that some developers aren't going to be as active in the community, but in my experience from working with developers, there's a lot who are looking for opportunities within town centers and specialize in that kind of development. So I think if anybody ends up walking away, someone else will come along, provided the policies are there and encouraging that. I don't know if that sort of helps or addresses your thoughts there.
I think we could probably have a long conversation.
Yes.
But I'm just watching the clock here, and I don't know how many.
Yes.
Do you want more questions on this now, or does it make sense? I'm thinking that was the last part, wasn't it? Growth
Yeah. So
management.
this is the last major section, and basically I've got some of the next steps to cover off. Really, if there's any other thoughts, you can send them to me after the meeting. That's not a problem, or through Michael. So it's definitely an opportunity for an open discussion.
Yeah, I was
beyond this.
if councillors wanted to provide input, we always have that opportunity. We can write and or I don't do a group document, or in any event, you can get concrete feedback from us going down the road. Maybe some digestion time too, on in terms of the content that you presented would be good for us too. So, okay, I'll let you go to your next steps then.
That sounds good. Thank you. Let's skip ahead to the conclusion and next steps.
Okay.
So this meeting nearly caps off our second phase. So following this, we'll be preparing an engagement summary that gets into a bit more of that detail on the survey responses and some of the comments that we've received through the stakeholder advisory committee and from members of the public. And we'll be taking those comments as well as your comments here tonight and anything else that you provide following this meeting. And we'll be finalizing our discussion papers so that there's sort of a final version that can be provided to the public for their review and so that we can start receiving additional comments. Phase 3 will start early next year. And I mean, as soon as the discussion papers are finalized, essentially. And that starts with our directions and recommendations report. So any additional feedback we get on the discussion papers will help us to draft some recommendations on where we go on a lot of those topics. And that sets the stage for what the policies might end up being. We're sort of floating ideas with the directions and recommendations report. We'll also be having the public open house, which is the opportunity for the public to come and hear about the work that we've done so far, some of our key issues, and some of the recommendations that we'll be making, so we can get some more feedback on that. And then in the summer, we move to phase 4, and I'm really hoping we're doing that in person because having those in-person open house meetings, we get a lot more interesting comments, and it really helps the public to see the importance of this work that we're doing and helps get some buy-in for some of the policy direction. So crossing our fingers for the summer. And then following that up with our statutory public meeting, which is sort of the last required public meeting before adoption of the official plan. And following that, we'll be able to provide our policies and the draft official plan for adoption later on next year. So I'm not sure if do we have anything left. So that's it, I think. Thank you so much for the opportunity to go through this. It is, for me, it's a lot more fulfilling to be able to have this kind of back and forth rather than, presentation, question period, and thank you, good night. So thank you very much. And I guess I can leave you for the rest of your council meeting, unless there's any final thoughts.
Any final thoughts, comments, suggestions, Michael?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. See the chair and over to Matt. As we suggested, it's a lot of information for council to take in this evening. So what we'll organize among staff and coordinate to send the presentation out to council, and then you can review and provide comments, and then we'll collate them and send them back to Matt, who's overseeing the project for us, so that there's further opportunity to provide input on your end.
I'll add my thanks then, Matt, to you and your team for the work you've done. And I guess I'll wish you happy reading when you get our document.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, good night then. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
We're going to move on to 5.2 now. Our next presentation is the public budget delegations, and no one has registered to attend. So we can move on to the minutes. We need to adopt the minutes of the 25th of November council meeting. The motion is that those minutes of Middlesex Centre Emergency Special Council meeting held on that date be adopted as printed. Do I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up, we have the consent agenda. There are 6 items. I'm looking to see, are there any items that you want to just ask a quick question about or have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, then the motion before us is that items 7.1 through 7.6 found under the consent agenda for December 2nd be adopted as recommended. Do we have a mover, please? Councillor Scott and Councillor Heffernan seconds it. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to staff reports. The first item up tonight is our operating budget, and Tiffany Farrell, our Director of Corporate Services, is going to lead this presentation, and other people will be moving in and out as we get to the sections. So I'll let you take it away, Tiffany.
Wait, can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Yes, it's just blocking me from starting my video.
Well, we'll bear with you then until you get it going.
So if I may, members of council, through the chair, the 2021 budget, just to give a bit of a prelude before Tiffany gets going, was presented to council consideration, has come together through the leadership of our treasurer, Tiffany, and her staff. Yeah. Together with the council representatives, Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley, we've put together a budget for the upcoming year that is responsible and manageable in the sense that it ensures a continuity of service delivery to our residents. It's creative, whereby the senior team reviewed and made appropriate changes to ensure that we can deliver on the projects proposed in 2021. And most importantly, it's a reactive and adaptable to the challenges that 2020 has put upon the municipality and society as a whole, for that matter. With the pandemic front and center, the budget proposed is fair and reasonable, keeping in mind the plight of our residents and area businesses. Tiffany's done a good job, and I look forward to having you comment on the presentation you're going to see tonight.
For that, and I see oh, sorry, Tiffany, I was just saying that I see your presentation up there. Are you okay now with your screens?
So through you, I can share the screen, but it has a meeting alert. You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So you guys can't see me. So I can proceed without you guys seeing me. But I can also wait to see if there's any kind of technical thing that we can work on here.
Well, maybe. Okay, so the technical people are asking for a 2-minute recess, and then they will address that, and then we can resume. So if you want to take a quick bio break or get a drink. Coffee? There's coffee apparently. So, okay, we'll come back in about 2 minutes then. I have 6:09.
Come in.
Ready to proceed. So Tiffany, if you'd like to start your presentation, we're all ears.
Perfect, thank you. So through you, Mayor DeVete, this is the 2021 budget presentation. We'll be concentrating on the operating budget today. However, all of the figures are in there for operating and capital. So up on the agenda tonight, so it's a 2021 budget creation. We'll be talking about budget funding, budget costs, and overall summary of what's the impact for the 2021 year. So the budget is a key planning document in achieving the municipality's strategic priorities. Each year we go through this process and we start early on, and this budget development in the end produces this key planning document that we use that ties in a lot of the plans within the municipality. This specifically is a financial plan. So it sets out the planned expenditures and the means of financing those expenditures. It's a statement of priorities for the year, the upcoming year. It establishes spending limits on programs and services, reflects funding priorities, and a basis of financial decision-making. So it is a political document, it's a management document, and it also links to all of these other operational plans within the municipality. It serves as a communication tool to inform and engage our residents and the community as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier, the process starts really early. It starts in around June or July in the summer before the budget upcoming year. And there's many different stages that the municipality goes throughout this entire process, including meeting with residents and getting feedback from the public, doing online platforms. There's many presentations to council with respect to budget items, and there's a lot of meetings within internally with staff at the municipality. So overall, there's a statement I'd like to read with respect to the municipality's budget process and our priorities. So this budget this year reflects our priorities as a community to support an inclusive, transparent, innovative, and traditional Middlesex center that provides a financially responsible level of service to the community. It is focused on the delivery of core municipal services for residents and businesses while managing to respectfully balance the needs of urban and our rural residents. So in the engagement being a big part of our budget, that is a main priority. There are a few things that were done for the 2021 budget, including a financial web content that was developed for the 2021 budget. You can find this on our website. There was a survey completed in the summer of 2020. This was linked together with our strategic plan and our official plan review survey. In lieu of presentations with the public and being more one-on-one with our community members, we did 8 short budget basics videos prepared by staff. If you haven't seen these videos, please visit our YouTube page as they are very informative on the budget process, the costs, and getting to know different members of your municipal team here. There's several emails and calls from residents that are received, and there's multiple budget discussion reports in council. And we create a budget committee in the fall this year for 2020. This included Councillor Hugh Arts and Councillor Wayne Shipley as the members of the committee. And the 2 members of the committee will join the senior leadership team as they come together to develop the capital and operating budget and talk about the overall impact, what the levy in the end should be, what our priorities are, what we need to make sure is included in the budget, the service levels, and we have those hard discussions if we're going to be cutting service levels or cutting specific projects. This is all discussed in those meetings. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley to talk about their experience on the committee this year.
This is Councillor Arts. I guess first off, when you do a budget, there are a lot of people who silently contribute, and I'd like to acknowledge all the behind the scenes individuals who contributed to the process. And I'd especially like to thank all the staff that had put up with me. I asked a lot of questions, and sometimes it took more than one explanation to have it sink in. Staff always took the time to explain my questions, and at no time did I suffer the Charlie Brown syndrome. Probably one of the highlights of being on the budget committee was not just the spreadsheets, the presentations, and the small details that you see in the summary, but it's the abstract conversations that come about when you've been in a meeting room all afternoon. I had a pretty good understanding of the capital budget due to previous exposure, so it was more like a review of what I thought I knew. For the most part, that held true. What I'd like the public to realize is that just because an item is in the capital budget, whether it's current or forecast, that does not mean it's guaranteed to happen. A capital budget has to be fluid, and things happen and things change. I say this because there may be items in the capital budget that never happen. When it came to the operating budget, I got to see the finer details that I'd never seen before. And what I found really interesting was correlating that information with other information. For example, I'd seen a cost-effective report on adding a new capital item in the Public Works Department. When I got into the operating budget, I came across the corresponding data that backed up that recommendation. Both Councillor Wayne Shipley and I set aside an entire Sunday to go over the operating budget. When I started that morning, I went from thinking I got a handle on this to scratching my head, and then just one of those, those moments where you're really angry. And the conversation with the dog started to lose validity, so I decided it was time to talk to a higher life form. As I was reaching for the phone, it rang. Picked up the phone, and the familiar voice said, "How's it going?" I go, "Wayne, I was just gonna call you." It was one of those conversations where we had okay, this goes here and that goes there, and then all of a sudden things started to make sense again. I found out the next day that for several years, staff had wanted to rearrange how things were presented, and it made a lot of sense to do so, but this was the first budget where they had it done, so that was quite a learning curve. Councillor Shipley and I spent the whole day going through that operating budget, and we had numerous phone conversations. Between the two of us, we figured most of it out, and we could not figure out what we asked the next day's budget meeting, our remaining questions. So thanks, Wayne, for being my sounding board and voice of reason. A few weeks back, Deputy Mayor Brennan asked how the budget was going. I replied I was asking questions and figuring most of it out. He replied that as long as you're asking questions, you are learning, and that's a good thing. Being on the budget committee was a good experience. And once again, I'd like to thank for everyone that was involved in the process.
Thank you, Councillor Arts. First off, I'd like to thank all the directors, Arnie, Rob, Scott, Colin, Tiffany, along with Johnny, our financial analyst, and Michael, our CEO, for helping me get through the budget process. I'm almost positive that when it was announced, the Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley run the budget committee, the vision that all the budget committee group had immediately in their heads was the exact moment the Titanic hit the iceberg. We're going down. Anyway, just want to thank them for all their patience with us. It's been a learning experience, and I've truly enjoyed the whole process. The budget process has definitely changed since I was here as fire chief. Each department did their own budget with no input from other departments. What really impressed me was the way all the directors work together now. When a director presented their budget, all directors could make comments and add input if they thought was necessary. Everyone's individual budget became everyone's budget when presented, and comments were taken in a positive form. This proves that all parties involved are working in the best interest of Middlesex Center. Operational budget was definitely a challenge for next year based on the effects of COVID had this year's operational budget. Ultimately, directors had to rely on previous operational budgets to get a true value for 2021. 2020 operational budgets were all over the place. Unfortunately, it's unknown how 2021 will play out. But by using the previous year's budget, we should be fairly safe. I would sooner be over budget on operational than under budget and having to raise the tax rate in 2022 to make up for this loss. Equipment sharing between departments is becoming more apparent. PWE is looking to add a boom truck to their fleet to be able to address street light repairs and tree issues on the roads, thereby eliminating third-party costs. Community services will also have use for this unit for trimming trees and parks, thereby also eliminating third-party costs. This process needs to continue between departments. When I started the budget process, I was going in thinking a 0% tax hike is needed, but quickly realized this was not going to work in respect to keeping reserves up. After doing some research and asking questions, I remember other municipalities not too far away did the same thing that ended up with a high tax hike in the 4th or 5th year to make up their 0% years. I'm fairly certain that most taxpayers would have no problem with a small increase each year as opposed to a 5% increase all at once. I personally feel this budget is fair for both taxpayers and allow Middlesex Center to maintain the expected level of service that we're accustomed to. Just a quick comment on the asset management. I was working here as fire chief when this plan was implemented. I have to admit at the time, it seemed like a lot of extra work. And to be honest with you, I thought it was a complete waste of time. However, I now see the benefits of having this plan and long-term financial planning. We're able to plan ahead for repairs, et cetera, by starting to set money aside well ahead of the projected dates of repairs, thereby lessening the cost to the taxpayers when repairs happen. Basically, it's no different than budgeting for a new roof for your house in 5 years as you start putting money away now. Although I've learned a lot from this process, there's still more to learn. I believe Councillor Scott mentioned last year that you almost need 2 years consecutive in the budget committee to get a complete grasp on the whole process, and I agree. As mentioned earlier, I thank all people for their help during this process, including Councillor Arts, who through many phone calls back and forth, we're usually able to figure things out. I can remember on more than one occasion when I had a question and the reply I got from Councillor Arts was, I thought I had this figured out until you called. Special thanks to Tiffany and her team. Not only does she have to do her own budget, she has to take all the directors' budgets and compile it together along with fielding questions from directors, staff, council members, and constituents. It's not an easy undertaking, but she pulls it off every year and puts it in a presentation for everyone to understand. Just one more person I'd like to acknowledge, and I'll hand it back to you, Tiffany, to present the budget. I know I speak on behalf of Councillor Arts when this next comment I'm going to make. Community Services Director Scott Mars and his team are undertaking a Community Services Master Plan in 2021, thereby eliminating a cost of probably close to $50,000 to $80,000 of consultant fees. Each department has all the information we need to do these plans, and I'm hoping this sets a precedent to do master plans internally when possible. I'm going to leave everyone with that thought and turn the meeting back to Tiffany. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley. At this time, does council have any questions for the two members of council that were on the budget committee?
Don't see any, Tiffany.
Okay, I'll
If
continue.
I could,
Oh, I'm blind.
if I could just have one quick question.
Yes, go ahead, John.
Just to Wayne and Arts, Hugh Arts and Wayne Shipley, the two councilors on the committee. From what I'm hearing, you're feeling that it'd be very beneficial for you two to be back on the budget committee for this next coming year too. You think 2 years in a row would make a huge difference?
Through the mayor to deputy mayor, Brendan, you're breaking up there. I couldn't understand it.
Sorry, I just wanted to know if the two of you that were on the budget committee this year feel it would be beneficial to be on it again next year so that it becomes more of a consistent input from council.
Do I hear a motion there, Deputy Mayor Brennan?
Sure, I would make that a motion that Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts serve on the budget committee for 2021.
The clerk says it can be done. I'm looking for a mover. Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor has moved. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Scott, all in favor?
Before we confirm all in favor, we should confirm numbers.
Oh, yes, you do have an option that I didn't realize.
Well, it's a very minor option. Your mayor, no, whatever council decides, I'm fine with. I don't want to take the opportunity away from someone that has not yet got to appreciate the process either, though.
I don't think, who was on it? You were on it? And yeah, and Councillor Silva was on it the prior year, if I recall correctly. Is that right, Deputy? Was it Councillor Silva the year before?
Yeah, Councillor Silva and myself were on it the year before, and then I believe Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Scott were on last year. So I think everybody's had at least one shot at it.
Yeah. I had a majority vote here, so I don't think anyone is feeling slighted by not being on the committee. If the gentlemen are willing, then I think that's passed. They're nodding and smiling. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we will confirm the vote again.
Yes.
Okay, so if I could show of hands again, please. All in favor?
We're not allowed to vote, are we?
Yeah. Okay, well, we have, okay, thank you. That is carried. Our members for next year are confirmed as Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts. Thank you for volunteering. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Arts and Councillor Shipley, don't worry, you'll have a lot more to learn as we implement the Questica budgeting software for the next 2022 budget. So next up, with respect to the budget survey. So we did have a budget survey results presentation to council. It was just an attachment. We didn't go through it in too much detail in September of this year, but over 90% of respondents thought the services they received were either fair, good, or excellent, compared to 85% last year. And I think this is a great thing to see the improvement year over year from the community. And we always like to give high fives here at the Municipality Middlesex Centre. And this would go out to everybody, council and staff, and the community itself, for seeing that they are feeling that their services they're receiving, that they're pretty happy with these. There is always some issues that are identified by residents. Many of these we take into consideration every year as we develop the budget. And some ideas have now made their way into our strategic plan that you're going to be seeing later on. Like this year, not tonight. So more recreational opportunities, particularly related to parks and green spaces, road safety, lower tax rates. And as you will see, the tax rate being suggested for the 2021 year is lower than in the past. Cost containment and spending reduction, particularly in light of COVID-19, and staff did take this into consideration, as you will see during the budget presentation, and a reduction in water bills. Not to steal the thunder of another director later on, but the recommendation going tonight is that the water bills remain at the same cost as they have been in 2020. So although not a reduction, but at least not an increase. So there's some budget issues and drivers that we're taking into consideration in the 2021 development. Obviously, one of the things that is very important to our team is to create enhanced transparency and accountability. This is the community's budget. We want the community to feel that they can understand it, and it's very transparent, and we are very accountable to meeting the objectives of the budget and staying within budget. Delivering a fiscally responsible budget is also extremely important, and manage COVID-19 financial impacts. As we proceeded through the 2020 year and the reports that were going to council, the community and council are well aware of all the COVID-19 financial impacts that happened during the 2020 year, and we are anticipating this to continue into 2021. These have been incorporated into the budget as much as possible. Maintaining a sustainable financial position for the municipality, continued analysis on reducing costs and creating more efficient processes. And you'll see this through some of the online and electronic processes we're bringing forward for the 2021 year. Building municipal reserve funds, and this is extremely important that the municipality concentrates on this. And you'll see that throughout the presentation, this is a theme. Priority focus on funding efforts in 2021 to address our infrastructure deficit as identified in the asset management plan. Our final asset management plan will be going to council in probably February of 2021. At that time, you'll see more information on our infrastructure deficit. And this has been included as part of the 2021 budget, but will continue to be a theme for the 2022-2023 budgets as we continue to proceed. Other considerations, there were no service level cuts for 2021. With that in mind, though, I want everyone to remember that there have been some service level disruptions due to COVID-19, specifically with the closure of some of our community centers that remain closed. These were not, this is due to the pandemic, and is not seen as a service level change, although I do realize this has impacted our residents and different community members within the community. However, we are planning on opening when it is safe, and that service will still be provided as soon as we can. Challenges stemming from COVID-19 pandemic were addressed. Reserve fund transfers were increased slightly to assist in covering capital cost. Continued communication strategies and improvements, asset management a priority, and reducing operating and capital costs where we could. At this time, I would like to ask if any members of council have any questions.
I see no show of hands at present, Tiffany.
Perfect, I'll keep going, thank you. So we're going to be talking about the 2021 budget funding. So in any budget, it's really made up of two things, your revenues and your expenses. So first, budget funding. So municipalities use a variety of revenue and funding sources to pay for the wide range of services. The most common being property taxes. And when you're thinking about your budget, you're thinking about your property taxes. There are other sources of revenue as well, such as grants from federal and provincial governments. There's user fees. There's some general user fees, such as recreation, planning applications, building permits. And then there's user fees related to the water, wastewater, and stormwater rates. There's transfers to municipal reserve funds, and this includes discretionary and obligatory, and those would be like development charges. That's revenue coming in for us, and it's also funding in order to balance the budget as well. Debt funding, although this isn't a revenue source, but it's available to municipalities to fund for capital projects, and there's some other miscellaneous revenue that we'll get into detail. Now, part of council decision-making process each year is to determine what levels of funding for services should come from the various sources of revenue. One of the most important things for the community and our residents, our commercial businesses to remember is that municipal share of taxes is only 9 cents of the dollar. So of all the taxes that you pay, the municipality will receive 9 cents, with 47 cents going to the federal government and 44 cents going to the provincial government. And when you think about a municipal budget and all the day-to-day services that we provide to the community, the 9 cents is significantly small. However, we do a lot of big things with that 9 cents. So with Middlesex Center, we determine revenue requirements for the municipality through our budgeting. So you're setting your tax rates. Another thing to remember when we're looking at our property taxes is the distribution of property taxes. Some residents and businesses might be surprised to know that not all of your property taxes stay here at the municipality. So the municipality receives 49% of your property tax bill. The county of Middlesex will receive 32%, and 19% goes to education. With education, it's to the different school boards within the municipality. And so that's where your property taxes where they go. The revenue is split up between the three sources. However, the burden for unpaid property taxes stays with the municipality. Even if residents or businesses do not pay their property taxes, the municipality is still responsible to pay the county and education portion. So looking at our 2021 budget, our sources of revenue, 61% is coming from our property taxes. User fees makes up 34%. Government grants and subsidies makes up 3%, and other municipal services make up about 2%. So getting to our property tax calculation. How are my property tax calculated? And if you want to learn more about your property tax and the calculation, please visit our YouTube page, and there is a very informative video that you can watch with respect to property taxes within Middlesex Center. So all that is for property taxes is we take your current value assessment times the tax rate equals the taxes that you're going to be paying. So your property assessment. Property assessment is the basis upon which municipalities raise taxes. A strong assessment base is critical to a municipality's ability to generate revenues. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC, will deliver the 2021 final assessment to Middlesex Center by December 15th, 2020. At this time, we do not have the final assessment, and we are waiting on those figures. So there is a new update for 2020 and that we wanted to provide to the public. So as part of the Ontario government's economic and fiscal update, the province announced their decision to postpone the 2020 assessment update. What does this mean? The government has indicated that property assessments for 2021, for that year, it'll continue to be based on the fully phased in January 1st, 2016 current values. So what happens with your property taxes is it happens in a 4-year cycle. So in January 1st, 2016, residents and businesses would have received information from MPAC on their current value of their property. Then what they would do is each year they would phase in a portion of that increase every year to then get to the final current value as of 2020. In 2020, the municipality was to receive the new fully phased in assessment for January 1st, 2021, which would then be phased in over 4 years as well. This was not received. So your 2020 taxes will be the same as your 2021 taxes, unless there's been a change to your property, and the changes are listed below. This would be something as a property owner you would be aware of these changes, and so you should be fully aware if there is going to be an increase to your property. So one of the things that is a little bit concerning with respect to the 2020 assessment delay is that the province has not provided a date for the future reassessment to be done. And so the municipality is waiting on this. As property taxes is our main source of revenue, this can provide a little bit of challenges for the municipality and with budgeting into the future. The province has also provided some more property tax changes with respect to small businesses. This is information that you'll receive more information in 2021 as we receive more information from the government on these changes. Additionally, for the business education tax, they have lowered the rate for the 2021 year. So you will be seeing that in your 2021 tax bill as well, as a lower rate for the business education tax. Now your assessment breakdown. So this is the assessment totals by property type for the municipality of Middlesex Centre. This tells you a little bit of a story with respect to what those assessment values total to. And you can see the breakdown between the type of properties. There's farm and residential that make up the majority of our 2021 assessment, and the other being about 9.3%, which would be then your commercial, your industrial, pipeline, exempt, and some other. But building off of what the assessment values are is the assessment revenue. So your 2021 projected assessment revenue is $20 million, a little over 20 million. And that's broken down between the residential being the majority of that revenue. So 76.9 or about 77% of our property taxes come from our residential properties. 12.4% comes from our farm properties, and 10.8 come from our other. Now, the assessment is based on the current values as provided by MPAC, and our municipality and council have no control over those assessment values. If you had an issue with your assessment value, it is important that you contact MPAC, and they'll help you through that. But what our municipality does have control over is our tax rate increases. So the tax rates are set by council, and this is that second part of that formula I talked about earlier. To calculate your property taxes, it's your assessment, which is developed by MPAC, times your tax rate, which is determined by your council. And that will give you your property taxes for the year. So taxes are needed to increase and to balance the budget to fund the municipality. You'll see here in 2021, the proposed tax rate is 1.47%. It is lower than any of the previous years since 2013. So when the budget committee came together and we looked at the budget as a whole, the pandemic and the financial issues being faced by our residents was very important. And we wanted to keep the tax rate at a reasonable level to make sure that people could manage this into their finances into 2021. And 1.47% is the final figure at this time. So this is your tax rate over the years, and it just shows the increasing tax rates on an average home assessed at $40,000. And this is just a tax allocation year over year. So at this time, 2021 has not been completed as we do not have the full county rate and we don't have any of the county rate, and we don't have the full school rate. So this will be updated on our website once that information is available. And how do we compare? We always look at our property tax rate as we compare to other municipalities within our county. And the municipality of Middlesex Center has the second lowest tax rate in Middlesex County, which is something to celebrate. And you'll see we're at 1.15%. The lowest in our county is 10 Center at 1%. Now, the next type of funding would be government grants. But at this time, I'm going to pause just to see if any of our council members have any questions with respect to property taxes.
No hands.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue. So next up is government grants. So the municipality receives certain grants from the provincial and federal government on an annual basis, including the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and the Federal Gas Tax Fund. So these are two that are a formula funding. So we consistently receive these. And I do have some good news to announce that the municipality has also received on Monday, November 30th, that we will be getting the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, the OCIF funding, at almost $1 million, $992,000. So this is formula funding we have received in the past, and we had not heard an announcement for the 2021 year until Monday of this week. So that has now been included into the budget, and I'll address that later on when we talk about our outstanding items. Another thing to keep in mind, and as you will see in this council meeting here tonight, staff are constantly applying for grant opportunities that become available during the year. This is something that staff make sure that this is a top priority, as getting that funding from different levels of government or different organizations is extremely important to meet our goals. And in 2020, as reported in council, the municipality did receive money around $397,000 for the phase 1 Safe Restart program related to COVID-19. There's a possibility of additional funding in 2021, but nothing has been announced at this time. Then we're going to get into some user fees. So I'm going to talk about user fees in two different ways. One is general and one is more utility specific. So our general user fees that are charged by the municipality include our recreational program fees, facility rental fees, building permits, and a few more. So these fees are paid for by the specific user or group of users, including visitors and non-residents, rather than property owners through the municipal tax base. User fees ensure tax fairness based on an understanding of who benefits from the services being delivered. An individual user, like a public skating enthusiast, or a group, motorists who park in downtown areas, versus a large portion or all of the population, residents that rely on emergency services. So what we're doing is we're charging specific user fees for those that are using that service and not burdening everybody within the municipality. And there are certain parts of our department that we do this. Fully funding these services through the tax levy would significantly increase property taxes for individuals who may never enjoy these specific services. But it is a balancing act, because many of our services, as we've spoken about before, say are recreational services. There are specific levels that we have covered by our property tax base, and then a portion that's paid for by the user fees. So an example would be, I believe it's about 50% that are arenas. So the ice time is paid for by the users, while the rest is paid for by the property tax base. The next type of our user fees is our utility. So the municipality funds water and wastewater through a user fee program. Water consumption and wastewater usage charges are based on how much water you use. Consumption is measured by your water meter. And the municipality also funds the stormwater management through a user fee program. And your stormwater user fee appears on your monthly utility bills. So a thing to remember is that the water, wastewater, and stormwater departments are self-funded. And so your property taxes are not going to pay for any of these programs. They are self-funded, and it's a user fee. So it would be 100% user fee. Now, another type of funding that we use within the municipality to fund, this is majority for our capital projects, would be our reserve and reserve funds. And these are crucial and critical to the municipality. They're used to pay our bills. The liquidity aspect, that cash flow to make sure that we have that available is critical. It covers our liabilities and our emergencies. As we're in a state of emergency right now, the municipality has specific reserve funds, such as the tax rate stabilization reserve fund, that can be used to help us to continue to operate during an emergency. And it's also used for effective asset management to ensure funds are available to renew or replace assets while charging the appropriate taxpayers. If we didn't have reserve and reserve funds, I would say it would be a very scary place. Our costs would increase, our debt servicing costs would be a lot higher than they are. We'd have short-term borrowing costs and larger contingency budgets. There'd be times where we couldn't even apply for capital funding through grant programs because we couldn't pay our portion if we didn't have any type of reserve funds to be able to finance that. Or we'd be looking at large swings within the budget. So you'll notice from the few slides before when we talked about your tax rate increases over time, you'll notice they were pretty consistent between 1.5 to 3%. If we didn't have reserve funds, you would see larger swings within those tax rate increases. Because as we know, this year we're operating during a pandemic and we're going into 2021 in the same situation. We have to pay for the specific items related to that. If we didn't have reserve funds or other items that we could rely on, our tax rates would be increasing and fluctuating. So it is a strategic management tool, and that's how this municipality uses it, very strategically. And there's some intended purposes with respect to reserves. And you'll see those here. I'll talk a little bit more on reserve funds a little bit later on as we note how they're being used for the 2021 year. This is a graph that'll show our projected 2021 reserve funds. And you'll notice there's been a decrease from 2019 and 2020 are about the same. And that was due to the fact that many projects in 2020 got carried forward to 2021 for cost containment purposes. And those were more cash flow purposes. And then in 2021, we'll be using more of our reserve funds for our capital projects, and we'll be bringing down that balance. Another way we fund projects within the municipality, and these would mostly be capital projects, but sometimes they're operating projects, especially when you're looking at things such as our official plan, which you saw the presentation earlier. Part of that is paid for by development charges. So they're fees collected by the developers at the time of the building permit is issued. So it's very important to remember development pays for development. One of the concerns that I do have is with respect to our cash flow. As our municipality is growing very fast, it is growing faster. We're putting the infrastructure in the ground and we do not have the development charges in cash to pay for it. So we do have debt with respect to our development charges at this time. And that brings up debt. So debt is not a revenue source by any means, but it is used for funding. The municipality can use debt to fund capital projects. Our annual repayment limit is 25% of our own source revenues, and our municipal debt policy is 17% of our own source revenues. We're presently at 10.94%. And you'll notice this number changed from our capital presentation that was done on November 12th. I did notice that in the presentation, we had the 14%, which would be what we have available to use. So we are presently only using 10.94%, so 11% of that capacity, and we do have about 14% that we could use should we need to. So we are in a better position than I had presented on November 12th. And that was just a typo. We didn't get into a better position over the last couple weeks. We do not have any projected 2021 debt financing for any of our capital projects. This is outside of the development charge funded capital projects from the 2019 year that were completed in 2020. Those were set up as a capital financing loan, which is essentially like a line of credit. We will be looking at getting full debt borrowing on those in 2021. This is the debt amounts that the municipality has in 2021 going into 2021. You'll see that we have one loan that will be maturing in 2021, so we'll no longer be paying for it. And the next one up will be in 2023. After that, we have about 10 to 20 years with respect to when the other debt retires. And you'll notice that the interest rates, those are locked in with respect to the different projects. And the highest one, I'm happy to say, will be mature in 2021. So it'll be great to see that 7% off our books. Now the debt allocation, this outlines what departments are paying for that debt. So you'll notice the majority of our debt is within our water and wastewater. That does relate to the fact that the municipality is growing and that infrastructure is being put in place right now and a little bit in the past. But it's also important to remember that who is paying it. So development charges pay 41% of our debt and user fees make up the other 19%. The user fees would be the water and wastewater users. The tax levy is 39% and specific users, Those are our tile drain loans and our municipal drains at 1%. And finally, other revenue. Well, expenditures tend to increase year over year across all categories. The same is not true for revenues, but we do have some other revenues, other revenue sources such as interest earnings to help fund our programs. Other revenue would be licenses, certificates, ownership changes, and penalties and interest within the municipality. It's not a large amount, however, it does help us cover the costs here at the municipality. And at this time, I'd like to ask if council has any questions on revenue and funding sources within the municipal budget.
So Councillor Shipley.
Here's a bit of Tiffany. Tiffany, just to confirm, on page 35, a reserve fund, we did defer some capital out of the reserve fund. So would that make 220 look, if it was back the way it should have been, 220 would have been lower, and projecting 221 would have been higher? Is it, but of the deferral, it's put it all back on 221?
Yes. So through you, Mayor DeVete, so last year when we presented the reserves, the 2020 value was significantly lower than what we're now projecting, and that was due to projects being carried forward. And additionally, 2021 will be a little bit higher in our reserve fund balances as we do not have, we're going to be not drawing from it with respect to that $992,000 I mentioned for the OCIF funding that we're going to be receiving. So that'll increase it. And when the municipality, if we defer capital projects, which what happened in 2020 into 2021, that money will stay within those reserve funds. So you'll notice that'll directly impact those values.
Thank you.
That's all for now.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep going. All right, so now we're on to the 2021 operating budget highlights. So these are just things that we keep in mind here at Middlesex Center as we develop the operating budget. So we continue to operate a leaner and more efficient organization, and you'll see this in a lot of the initiatives myself and the other directors will be discussing tonight. The annual budget is based on the paramount objective of continued fiscal responsibility while avoiding or minimizing negative impacts on services. So we do have some modest enhancements in select services to keep pace with public expectations and to deal with growth in service requests resulting from various master plans and a continued objective to build a strong local economy. You'll notice at our last council meeting, there was a community improvement plan that was approved into the 2021 year. So that's there to help our local economy here and small businesses. The municipality continues to maintain a solid financial position, which is a result of sound financial policies and practices, thereby providing added flexibility to meet the community's expectations. So we always look for increased public engagement in the budget process and incorporating that public feedback. 2020 was very difficult in order to provide this for the 2021 year due to the pandemic, but we did provide some different new videos that people can check out, but we did continue with the survey. And of course, residents and anyone within the community can reach out to myself or any of the other directors to ask about the budget and the budget process and provide your feedback because it's extremely important. There's a continued emphasis on allocating budget expenses and revenues to better reflect actual costs within the departments. So this is what Councillor Arts was referring to earlier this meeting when he was talking about his experience. One thing you'll notice, and you saw it in the capital budget, but you'll once again see it in the operating budget, is we've developed a new facilities department. So it's a way to allocate the budgeted expenses and revenues specifically related to our facilities, so we can better track those costs and the costs within that actual facility and better manage that. That made a huge change for our two members of council on the budget committee this year, but they did great with it. And you'll see this continue on for many years to come. Always delivering a fiscally responsible operating budget and maintain that sustainable financial position. And we always want to reduce costs and create more efficient processes, and the consideration on both short and long-term impacts on the decisions. This will be evident with respect to the capital projects that Councillor Shipley alluded to earlier as well, with respect to the PWE purchasing a specific type of capital equipment so that this will reduce the costs in the long term with respect to hiring consultants or contractors. And ensuring appropriate funding levels are in place related to service levels and any service level enhancements. So there were many opportunities, but there also were some challenges. We have the aging infrastructure to keep in mind. Obviously, climate change and recent weather events are something that we need to keep in mind, particularly on our stormwater management. The lack of predictable government funding. I was very excited to see the OCIF funding announcement on Monday. However, it was November 30th, cutting pretty close to the end of the year. These are type of things that I would love to see earlier on, and that we could actually have that stable government funding and predictable, that we would be able to build within our budget and plan better using this. And we have a lack of business and industrial growth. You would have seen this with their assessment breakdown. The majority of our assessments falls within residential and farm. We do lack that commercial industrial. I know this is an initiative of the municipality, and it was identified as part of our strategic plan. It's very important that we get that diversification within our assessment base. The uncertainty around MPAC's assessment and request for reconsiderations in 2021. So not only do we not have a date set for when MPAC will do their assessment that was planned to come out in 2021, we don't know if that will happen in 2022. And that reassessment, as well as the assessment growth, is a big part of the municipality's plan to transfer funds into our reserves, to build our reserve funds. On top of that, we have the request for reconsideration in 2021. And there could be additional requests for reconsideration from property owners with respect to COVID. And we do not at this time know how those will be handled. That could indicate there will be more write-offs and taxes in 2021 than anticipated. There's always that balance between services and costs. And of course, as I've mentioned throughout this entire presentation, the COVID-19 pandemic. So specifically on the pandemic impacts, you're going to see this within the budget: lost revenues due to closure of facilities and specific services, lower than anticipated investment income, increased costs to manage the challenges of operations in a pandemic. These are things like your sanitizer, your masks, your additional cleaning, possibility of financial measures provided to residents and businesses facing financial hardships due to the pandemic. As council and the public will remember, in March and April of this year, council came together and provided financial measures for our community that assisted in the finances for our residents and businesses impacted by the pandemic. As we don't know what's going to continue with the pandemic in 2021, this is always a possibility that it may happen again, which will impact our budget. Possible cash flow impacts as the pandemic continues. So as the municipality's majority source of revenue is our property taxes or our utility billings, if residents cannot pay, then the cash flow impacts will impact the municipality. As I mentioned earlier, we still have to, even if the property taxes aren't paid to us, we still have to pay the county and school boards their portion. So this outlines the operating budget by department. And you'll notice that this is very similar to what you had seen last year. Our Public Works and Engineering Department, which includes our environmental. The environmental would be your water, wastewater, and stormwater, is the biggest portion of our municipality. Reserve transfers is separated within this graph, and that's another large portion. So the reserve transfers, the majority of that is funding going from property taxes into our capital projects. Year over year, though, our operating budget hasn't changed too much. Each department, there's some small increases or changes throughout the year, the 2 years, but very minimal. And this slide shows how municipal property taxes are distributed. So every dollar of municipal property taxes is shared between the services shown in this chart. So general government, for example, is 3 cents of every dollar. Now your operating budget breakdown. So this is 75% of the operating expenses of the municipality fall into 6 expenditure categories. You'll note that this is not your top 6. So this is just the 6 consistent over the years. So from 2017 to 2021, these 6 expenditures are among your top, and they make up 75% of your operating expenses. And the next slide shows your top 15 operating expenses. And then they're all listed there below. It is surprising to see that 15 items is what makes up 91% of your budget. And then the other thing to highlight that we like to highlight every year is our consulting, municipal consulting projects. So we do undertake various projects throughout the year that are not considered capital due to their non-tangible nature. But many of these are typically very specialized in nature and require a specific skill set. So the municipality hires consultants, and they're either funded through the tax levy unless otherwise noted. Many of these projects you'll see are funded by user fees or development charges. And so the list here of our 2021 consulting projects are here. And I will open the floor for questions at this time. And if you have any questions for myself or any of the specific directors.
Thank you. Questions for Tiffany? I don't see any.
Perfect, I'll keep going. So this is your operating highlights for 2021. So as mentioned earlier, the 2021 MPAC assessment cycle delayed to an unknown date due to COVID-19. We saw a decrease in our placing costs of 0.73%. We had a cost of living increase for employees of 1% as approved by council in the fall of 2020. We have an employees benefit cost increase of 5%. This is an estimate at this time. Insurance increase here is noted at 20%. I do have some unfortunate news to present that the insurance, we've been notified by our insurance carrier that the increase will actually be 30% for 2021. We received this information late today. What that would increase instead of 133 is $209,000. The municipality staff will be working at incorporating that into our 2021 budget. So yes, the increase in insurance is now 30% rather than 20%. We did receive a $20,000 rebate in 2020 due to our facilities being closed. That would be transferred into our insurance reserve. So if the municipality does need to utilize our insurance reserve, this would be one of those situations that we would look into it. Overall, we had the Conservation Authority's decrease of 0.77% altogether, all 5 of them. Some had increases, some had decreases though. There's an increase in budget for hydro costs of 7%. The 2020 Ontario CPI for September 2020 was just 0.5%. And there was a small increase in transfers to reserves from the tax levy for the 2021 capital initiatives. So these are highlighted the personnel changes. So our budget model is a zero-based budget applied with information from our payroll system. So it is based on each individual employee. The salary cost of living, as I mentioned, was 1%. There are 38 employees eligible for a step increase at 4%. There are 3 new positions that are incorporated in this budget for 2021. The Public Works and Engineering, there's an equipment operator. This will replace a contract position within that department. Within general government, there's a planning and records assistant that replaces the co-op position that we've had in the past with respect to records. And we have a new building inspector that's been identified for our building department. And once again, specific to personnel changes is the benefits, health and dental increase of 5%. So our reserve transfers, to highlight the total transfer to reserve funds increased to a little over $100,000. There was an increase in external reserve revenue, almost 24,000, and that was specifically related to the 2021 federal gas tax funding increased. Additionally, there's an increase in internal reserve transfers of about 76,000, and that was just money that we were able to raise on taxes and then transfer into reserves, more than we did last year. However, the main point I like to get across when we're talking about our reserve funds, although we seem to have a healthier balance and than we have in the past, which is great to see. As you've noticed in the chart, it continues to increase. We are spending $3.7 million more than we're transferring to reserve funds. So we have 10 million identified in 2020, that's 2021 capital. And that we're going to be spending, and we have 6.4 that we're actually transferring into reserve. So you'll see that we are spending more than we're actually putting in. This does exclude water, wastewater, and stormwater and building, as these do not affect the tax rate. So this is the chart here, and you'll notice if we were transferring in more than we were spending, our projected 2021 balance wouldn't decrease as much. I'll ask if there's any questions before I get into the general government specifically.
No questions right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so our general government, there was a net operating increase of 374,000. That does, or 374%. That does seem like a really high number. However, it's just because last year we had such a low increase. So you're looking at increase over year. So it was 138,654. And we do have some new initiatives or some continued initiatives that will be happening into 2021. So we do have some new Laserfiche workflows to improve our internal processes that we're looking at implementing into 2021. This will not only benefit internally, it benefits our record system, it will benefit our residents as well. We have a learning, it's more training and tracking module implementation in Dayforce, and this will be taking Dayforce to another new level, and it will be very much utilized by our municipal team internally, and it is a great resource to be able to provide our team members with that necessary training and then tracking for specific licenses and designations. Questica budgeting software, so that will be something that we'll be implementing into 2021. There's an implementation of a new payment processing online system. Although this does not have any costs directly, like direct cost to the municipality, it does have some staff costs to implement, and it is a new process that I think you'll notice the council report on it later on tonight for Pimentus, and it's a great new initiative to provide another service to our residents. Their staff cost of living increases and step increases that amount to general government, and the allocation of the planning and records assistant, part of that is within this cost base. The public receptions, which includes the 2021 service awards, and that's for all the departments. There's physical demand analysis for specific positions. We will be doing a development charge amendment study. This will be a massive project in 2021 after our official plan completes. Implementation of our strategic plan directives. And the asset management plan we're going to be completing. And one of the items I'd like to be adding into that, which I'll be talking about in more detail next year, is to align it with our development charge study and include our development type assets. Because of the size of our municipality, it is not a requirement under the regulation. However, given the fact that our municipality is growing and the development within our municipality, I think it's very important that we do look at including that in our asset management plan. And that also includes the annual software costs. Community improvement plan of 30,000, employee continuous improvement initiative for 30, and the completion of the official plan and zoning bylaws for 120,000. That is more planning related in that department. However, we've incorporated into the general government slides because planning doesn't get its own. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Michael just to see if our CEO, Michael DeLillo, has any comments that he would like to make.
Thank you, Tiffany. Through the chair, as you can see, members of council, there's a lot of initiatives that we have highlighted for 2021. And a few takeaways from that is we're working our way through the strategic plan that's coming to completion in the new year. So we've set funds aside to make sure that we can fulfill some of the initiatives that have been highlighted from the community and council. The other part that I wanted to acknowledge is just investing in our employees and creating a culture where staff can feel empowered to come forward with suggestions. So we set aside some funding to help support ideas and initiatives that come from staff to help with how we can achieve better operational excellence and efficiency. So we've put money aside in the budget, which I hope to see and report to council later next year on some great ideas that come forward. It's going to be grassroots approach, and we're excited to see that happen. Council received the report on the CIP at the last council meeting, and that'll be coming. The bylaw will be coming for adoption. And then the continuation of our official plan. There's money set aside so that we can follow through with the consolidation of our OPAs and our zoning. That'll just round the completion of that full document. So a lot of great initiatives that are built on this year, and we hope to bring some great outputs to council this time next year.
Perfect. And I'll just ask at this point, does any council member have any questions?
We're batting 1,000.
Nope, sounds great. Now I'm just going to pass it over to our Director of Emergency Services and Fire Chief. You're just on mute.
There we go. Thanks. Through you, Mayor, to Council. Operationally, Fire Services has a number of ongoing carry forward projects for 2021. Some of these include our 4-year, now 5-year cyclical PPE or personal protective equipment replacement program, aging equipment replacement in the way of non-capital projects such as radios, pagers, medical defibrillators, along with various outdated ancillary tools such as chains, window cutters, cribbing, stabilizers, these type of items. Ongoing training is definitely a big part of our fire services and the fire services in general. With our cost-effective internal certification program continuing for 2021 and expanding, we're keeping costs as low as we can, and we're able to pre-plan for these a lot better in the coming years. Fire services, our fire service is one of the very few fire departments in Ontario fully certified to accepted national industry standards and also recognized by the Fire Marshal's Office. Also, our new in-house designed and implemented fire prevention program, which supports 2 of our neighboring municipalities, is progressing very well and produces a revenue stream of approximately $62,000 annually, along with strengthening county-wide relationships. This also includes the implementation of our report management software, which will make us more effective in what we do. Another big piece of fire services work plan for 2021 is to engage with and potentially solidify additional remuneration type agreements with our neighboring fire departments. Currently, we have agreements with for the provision of services, water, ice water rescue, and high angle rope rescue services with our neighbors to the north. And I believe in this area there's many more opportunities to capitalize on. Finally, back on the first slide, you'll notice a 6.8% increase. This is comprised of a number of cost containment projects that we had that are being moved forward for 2021. However, these projects account for only 1/3 of this increase, which equates to approximately $31,500. The additional amounts include the policy approved protective footwear for all 117 of our firefighters, various facilities projects that were budgeted and pushed forward, brought forward from 2020. And a big one for us is lost revenues from the pandemic. This was definitely detrimental for our budget over 2020. And finally, the employee assistance program cost for all of our stations. That concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions, council? I have one. Would you be able to leverage the Dayforce module for tracking the driver training, certification, and all those pieces in the fire department?
I'll push that one to Tiff. I'm not 100% sure of those intricate details of Dayforce.
So the Dayforce does include not only the full-time and part-time employees, but also our paid on-call firefighters are included, and they would be able to track their training within that system. I do know our fire chief does use a different system as well, Beyond, I believe it's Fire Pro and then Beyond, where they are currently tracking that information, but it can be put into that training module.
Okay, good. I was wondering about that because of the different kind of status that they have. So awesome. Thank you kindly. There are no other, oh, sorry. Councillor Scott has a question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Fire Chief Colin. What would be an example of lost revenue for the fire department for due to COVID?
A piece of that would be our recuperation of dollar amounts from our motor vehicle collisions. Those are actually down somewhat this year due to a 3-month hiatus and reduction in calls. Another big piece that we're missing from over 2021 was sale of vehicles. So we had a few vehicles that were over their expected lifespan, and we sold those on our gov deals. So those are a couple big pieces.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I guess it's good that it's down. People are less accidents, right? So that's not a good thing, or that is a good thing.
Scott's up next, is he not?
Yeah, I guess I was supposed to introduce him.
Oh,
without
sorry,
further ado,
no more questions. Would you like to introduce the next speaker, please?
Scott Mayers, Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Just waiting for the slide to change here. Okay, just have a couple of slides here to go through. As you see, it starts off with a fairly large number change compared to last year. As Tiff has alluded to a few times in the presentation so far, community services has been hit really hard with respect to our revenues due to a number of closures this past year. Hopefully with vaccines on the horizon, hopefully things will start to normalize as the year progresses in 2021. So hopefully we can start to get back to normal and start recuperating some of these costs. Again, as Tiff said, we are looking to open up our facilities as soon as it's safe to do so and get back to our normal activities there. But saying all that, we were conservative in assigning our revenue targets for 2021. The Illiton Arena, as you know, it's approaching 50 years old. With the unfortunate news, we did not get the grant through the federal government and the province. You'll start to see some of these costs come up from time to time. Certainly over the next 5 years, as the building continues to age, we'll be looking at adding different components that will need to happen to obviously keep that building running. You'll see a refrigeration plant upgrades here at the Wellness Center. That's actually to replace, I'm just looking up the compressor. It's a compressor, not sure which one it is, but one of our lead compressors there that's approaching the 30,000 hour mark. That's identified there. As you know, 2020, we had significant issues, particularly in the Kilworth, Kamoka area with respect to gypsy moths. We're anticipating this is not going away anytime soon. So we did set aside some money to hopefully combat that invasive species throughout the community. We do feel it might, it's a bit cyclical. It might head north, as it progresses. So we do want to come up with a plan of attack on how we're going to deal with this. So this money is to work with special consultants to deal with forestry and help us do some targeted approaches on certain woodlots, and then hopefully some treatments as well with part of that money. As Tiff alluded to, the development of a more facilities budget. So we've moved with a lot of the facilities within my department already. Those items have been moved into this particular budget, but as well we have we've included the fire halls and the public works facilities to fall under this umbrella as well. So just a couple of the key highlights in this particular business unit. We've identified some life safety improvements. This is specific to the doors. The way the building is partitioned off, it's through our fire inspections. These do not meet the right requirements. So we're looking to improve that, in early 2021 to rectify that. So that's new doors, new hardware. I think there's approximately 9 doors that need to be addressed. So that price does add up. We have some further replacement of safeties on our refrigeration plant in the Wellness Center. We're looking to paint the admin wing hallway at the Denfield Ops Center. We're also, again, further to the Illiton Arena, we're looking to rebuild the arena compressors there. We need to replace pump 5 at the Wellness Center. This is a pump that runs pretty much all the time. This is our heat recovery, part of our heat recovery system. This actually runs the in-floor heating at the Wellness Center. So it's a well-used pump over the last 10 years. And then another safety device at the Alderton Arena. We have ammonia detection there already. It's a much older system. This one will certainly upgrade that to be a digital readout of the ammonia level within the room, plus provide visual beacons and such at the in the facility that will identify the operator if there was to be any issues inside the compressor room. So those are the really quick and dirty highlights for community services and facilities. So be happy to answer any questions.
Is there anything for Scott? I don't see anything, Scott. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll introduce Rob Cascadden, our Director of Public Works and Engineering, to start with water wastewater.
So, thanks, Scott. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to start off with water, wastewater, and stormwater, the environmental division. So year over year, we're looking at a net operating cost increase of about $400,000, which is about 12.5%. So this does come across as a large number. On the next slide, you're going to see where that increase comes from, and I think that'll shine a little bit of a different light on it. Essentially, once we back out a few items, it's more like a 0% increase. So, sorry, Tiffany, can I get you just back up one? Thanks. So just going to touch on the maintenance service levels. Certainly, the intent is that we'll be maintaining the same service levels in 2021. I just wanted to identify the scheduling of preventative maintenance. Even in the short time that I've been here, I really feel like staff have been working really hard to get on top of maintenance of the existing equipment. And that's certainly the approach that's going forward with the budgeting for 2021. Okay, next slide. So the $400,000 that we're seeing in the increase is really comprised of these studies that are listed here. We have a water financial plan of about 15,000, wastewater condition assessment of over 100,000, and then 3 different pieces of the servicing master plan. Which is the water, wastewater, and stormwater. There is a 4th component of that, which will be transportation, and the intent is that it'll all be completed as one master plan. But you can see that the total of what's hitting the water, wastewater, and stormwater is in excess of $400,000. So if you were to back out these studies, we wouldn't be looking at an increase at all. And certainly from the master plan standpoint, these are costs that we're only going to see like once every 10 years roughly. So they're not really going to be an annual cost. And then the one thing I'll just touch on the water financial plan is that the intent is in 2021 is to use a consultant for that work. However, that's one that I can see that down the road that we would bring in-house to complete. That's required every 5 years. And then just briefly touching on the software. So in 2021, we will be upgrading some of the software and a couple of the small hardware pieces, just as far as the monitoring and maintaining databases for the different facilities. I can stop there and see if there's any questions on the environmental side before I move into the transportation side.
There are no hands up, Rob.
Okay. So on the transportation side of Public Works, we're actually looking at a net operating cost decrease of $375,000, or about 6%. And as much as I would like to say that we are just that efficient this year, and that was that big of a decrease, the reason that we see this is that we've actually shifted the surface treat or the tar and chip work that we do on the roads from operating into capital budget. So that was about $565,000 that moved from operating to capital. So if we were to bring that back in, same thing, similar to the water and wastewater, we see a component or a section of the transportation, or the master servicing plan being the transportation component. So really, if you were to bring back in the $565,000 and take out this master servicing component, there would be a very little increase over previous years, or a little decrease. It would be more like a 0% or close to it. So we have in the past, and we will continue to use subcontractors for certain work. Sometimes this is just due to seasonal capacity. Sometimes it's specialized equipment or specialized labor that's required. There's a list there of a number of things, and a lot of those things we do a portion of, like hauling materials. We do haul materials with our trucks, absolutely. If we're working on a capital project where we require some additional labor, additional trucks just to remain efficient, we would hire those in. And then there's things such as the bucket truck for tree trimming or the changing of street lights that we in the past have hired out. But in the capital budget for 2021, we have identified the purchase of a bucket truck with the intent of bringing as much of that in-house as possible. Okay. So when it comes to roads, we do a lot of different things with them, but a couple of things here highlighted is hard top patching and shoulder maintenance. And that runs us about $100,000 a year. And that includes both the tar and chip and the asphalt roads. And we have about 180 kilometers of tar and chip surface roads within the municipality. So the gravel roads, we have about 278 kilometers of that. And the loose top resurfacing, the grading, and the dust control are kind of the biggest components of the yearly operational cost for that. And that totals roughly $720,000. Now, I'll just make a comment there that we will be looking closer at the cost to surface treat existing gravel roads over time, and we're going to kind of dive in and take a closer look as to what savings there are versus what the cost is to do that conversion, and really look at the all-in cost and see if we can make an argument to start converting roads on a priority basis. And then I guess lastly, an important thing to point out, and I think is very important to the public, is the Vision Zero campaign. This fall, we did get the signage available to the public, and we have had some uptake with that. Certainly hoping to see more uptake come spring, but we will be continuing with an educational campaign, and we have some budget in there, and we'll be looking at ways to continue with this program. Then another major component of our roads department is certainly winter snowplow, winter maintenance for the 5 or more months of the year, depending on the weather. So the biggest component of that is our winter patrols, and then the snow plowing, sanding, and salting, of course, and that totals around $630,000, and that covers all roughly 583 kilometers of roads. Obviously, we're adding a little bit more every year with new developments being assumed. That covers the cost of material and labor. And then another item is the centerline marking throughout the municipality, and then also stop bars and crosswalks. So most of that work has been completed by the county in recent years. They have the machine, and so we contract that out to them. However, in the capital budget, again, we've identified the purchase of a small painting machine so that we can do the stop bars and the crosswalks and those types of things in urban settings to save that cost. Maybe before I move into fleet, if there's any questions on the roads department.
You may move ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. So fleet, so net operating cost increase that we're budgeting for is about $280,000. And that is a significant increase. What we've done is we've actually kind of, I guess, hedged against higher prices in 2021. One, we do have the addition of some fleets, so there's some additional costs there. Prices have been somewhat suppressed on fuel in 2020. So we have budgeted a little higher in 2021, just in case it's something, drastic changes in the market, because we've seen oil and gas prices do something funny in past years. So any money that's not spent from that budget will then go back to reserves. So we would like to keep that buffer in there. And then insurance, I know Tiffany touched on it earlier, that we were expecting a 20% increase, and now it's 30%. So there's that 133,000 thrown there is not only fleet, but that's municipality wide. But our portion is a fair chunk of that as well. So. So I guess any questions on fleet?
I don't see any questions.
Okay, then I will turn it over to Arnie, our CBO.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Council. I am here to present Building and Bylaw Enforcement Department's budgets for 2021. As many of you know, and we've discussed in the past, and Tiffany alluded to earlier, Building Division is solely funded by user fees. And we've been very lucky to see the building boom we've seen over the last 5 years. And we're pleased to say that our operating costs and drain on the taxpayer would be zero, and that user fees take care of Building Division's budget. Next year, we expect construction to continue on as strong as it is this year, based on conversations with builders and what planning has come down the pipe towards Building Division. So we are expecting another $300,000 increase in revenue next year. Now, not only do we receive user fees, but we also do provide transfers to Middlesex Center's reserves of $40,000, which pays for our costs of working in this building and our interactions with other staff. So it's sort of Building Division's rent to the municipality. Okay. So the most significant cost for Building Division in next year is our anticipated hiring of a building inspector. We've certainly found over the last 5 years that we need to keep pace with the demand of our timelines and getting inspections done. And the teams worked very hard over the last few years, but we found this year has been exceptional, and we see it continuing. So we're hoping to hire another building inspector starting in January. That's our primary expense to Building Division next year. Other fees that we do, or other costs that we see, are membership fees to different associations we belong to, and registering ourselves with the province as building inspectors. Also, we do have ongoing professional training. From time to time, we would go away for that training. Right now, it is offered online. So we budget about $10,000 a year for our professional development. Okay. With regards to bylaw enforcement, we're actually anticipating a decrease in costs next year. This is primarily due to a nice cost for animal control we've seen this year, and that the animal control costs were actually less than anticipated. So we're dialing back our expected costs for animal control next year. And we've also seen that our revenue from bylaw enforcement actions, such as parking tickets and proceeding with fines for bylaw enforcement activities, has brought in a significant revenue. Also this year, our contract with the commissionaires has come to an end at their request due to COVID-19 and the availability of staff. So we are retaining that the budget for the commissionaires into next year, and we're looking at options for another consultant to potentially help bylaw enforcement, primarily with patrols of our parks and our parking. Other than that, I'm here if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Are there questions? Seeing none, I think that's it. Arnie?
Yeah, I'll pass it back to Tiffany then.
All right, thank you very much.
Perfect. So our operating summary for this year, the net operating budget increase of $559,796, and that's a levy increase of 2.85%. That would be a tax rate increase of 1.47%. There were no service level cuts. We had increased communication initiatives, numerous cost containment strategies incorporated, information on consultants provided, and asset management plan is a priority. So before I get started into the capital budget, which I won't be going through in detail, are there any outstanding questions on the operating budget?
Okay, none here in the room and apparently not out in video world either.
Sounds great. And then with respect to the 2021 capital budget, nothing has changed in the capital budget from the November 12th presentation. So at this time, I will flip through the slides, but does council members have any specific questions on the capital budget? And I can stop at that specific department slides.
I see shaking of heads, no questions so far.
Perfect. So this part of the presentation is available on our website as well as our budget page so that residents in the community can refer back to it and see a complete comprehensive budget, but we won't go in detail into the capital projects. So at this point, we're going to be looking at our 2021 budget summary and looking ahead of what's going to be happening in the next coming years. So overall, as I mentioned, we get to a 2.85% tax levy increase. How do we get there? And you'll see everything outlined below. This is by department, whether they're increasing on the levy or decreasing on the levy. Plus, we did have a small reserve transfer increase in general government over last year of about $76,000. So we have a 2.85% tax levy increase, a 1.47 tax rate increase. We have $35 million in operating costs, 20 to 21 million in capital projects, 9.7 transfers to reserves, and 9.7 million transfers to reserves, and 22 million transfers from reserves, which does include the water, wastewater, storm, building, and development charges. So what is the residential impact? So you'll notice here that your assessment for 2020 and 2021 remains at the $400,000. So therefore, there is no assessment increase unless, as mentioned earlier, you have something specific to your property. And so this would show that a house assessed at $400,000 would have a $36 increase in their tax bill related to that 1.47% increase in tax rate. And if you have a farm assessed at $1 million, once again, your assessment didn't change, but your tax rate did, and that will result in a $22 increase in your yearly tax bill. So at this point, we have some outstanding items. So I can remove from the list the Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding. So as mentioned earlier, we received this information on Monday night, November 30th, and we will be receiving $992,000. This funding will be applied to a specific capital project, and I believe it will be Vanek Road that was funded by our Roads Capital Reserve Fund. So what does this mean? It means that that money, that $992,000 that was originally coming from Roads Capital Reserve Fund will stay in the Roads Capital Reserve Fund. Other outstanding items are federal and provincial grant opportunities. As you can see, there are many that are even being applied for tonight and that will be presented as a staff report or were included in the consent items. So there are more funding and grant opportunities available, and we will be applying for these whenever we can. Any other changes would be the final insurance amount. As mentioned throughout, we now have an estimate of 30% increase over last year, and we will be incorporating this into the budget. However, they will provide us with a final amount in the next couple weeks. It should not exceed the 30%, and any changes would then be transferred into the insurance reserve fund for next year. So before I get into looking forward, is there any questions on the operating summary as well as any outstanding items?
There are none.
I'll keep going. So looking forward, things that you can look forward to in our next budgets coming up. 2022, 2023, we're going to continue to operate a leaner and more efficient organization. We're going to review the requirement for enhanced funding levels that are required as a result of service level improvements resulting from various master plans. And one of the things I want to mention is ensuring our master plans are not done, not completed in isolation. So it's using items from our strategic plan, which our community services team will use when they're developing their community services master plan in 2021. But from that, we should be looking at the other master plans. And you'll see also how Public Works and Engineering is doing a lot of master plans for water, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, all together in 2021. And this will give us some great information in order to plan for the future. Additional investments and assets must be well planned, fiscally responsible, and considered in the context of funding priorities. Continued increase required to reserve funds levels to protect the municipality's financial future. Although we only put $76,000 more than last year in our reserve funds, it is something that we need to strive for in the future to continue to increase the amount going into our reserve funds to save for the future. The healthy reserve funds support positive cash flows. Continued efforts to manage long-term debt levels and to use debt strategically. Budgetary decisions should be considered both short and long-term impacts, which you will see tonight. That was incorporated a lot within the 2021 budget, and we can only continue to do better in the future. Consider council approval of a multi-year capital project commitments along with cash flow forecasting. This is something I'd like this municipality to move towards, and possibly something that we'll address a little bit more in detail in 2022 and then into new council terms. Develop long-term reserve fund requirements that aligns with the municipal asset management plan. This direction also comes out of our strategic plan. Ensure the asset management plan recommendation on funding level required has been included in the future capital budget. And this could be a larger amount than what we're used to. And we need to make sure that we take that into consideration and we properly plan for that. We need to focus on reasonable funding levels needed to sustain our current service levels and allow for growth, service enhancements, and economic development for the community. We need to manage our capital commitments and our cash flows. We need to refine the fiscal strategy and set financial policy, which will be coming to council in 2021. Balancing the cost between today's residents and future residents. So as much as we always have to balance the needs of all of our residents, we need to look at the balance between the rural, urban, today's residents, future residents, and we need to plan for all of that. We're going to continue to work on the alignment of our long-term goals and objectives with the long-term funding plans. We did want to incorporate, say, the official plan results, our strategic plan into the 2021 budget. We were able to incorporate some aspects of that, as you know that the strategic plan is starting to wrap up. And you'll see that that has been included, but in 2022, that strategic plan, the official plan, that development charge update will all be influenced in our 2022 budget and going forward. We'll have a zoning bylaw update. Our asset management plan will be finalized and be more of a working document that we'll be working with every year. We're going to have various service master plans, the community improvement plan and the community services master plan from 2021, which will help guide the community services department into the future. We will always continue to engage and inform the public. COVID-19 changed a lot of things for us in 2020. And unfortunately, we were not able to do those community roundtables, those get-togethers. And I can tell you personally, I did miss it. I love being a part of the community and hearing from the residents. And so I want to hopefully get back to that for the 2022 budget. The videos were a great experience and it's very educational on our YouTube channel. Please check them out. However, being able to interact with the residents is something that is crucial for the budget process. We do have informal meetings to obtain feedback. Please feel free to email or call me at any time. Looking forward to something like participatory budgeting. So we set aside some money and we let the community figure out where we're going to spend it. I think these would be great initiatives to get everybody involved within the community and get them excited about some of these projects. We have a lot of operating projects that are exciting, and especially capital projects. Having community feedback on that would be amazing. Increased use of social media. We'll continue with our survey because it is important to see what the residents feel their money, have them understand where their money is being spent, as well as get their feedback on what they would like to maintain or reduce or increase levels of service. So that really does help us when we're planning the budget each year. And public education on the municipal budget. The municipal budget is a complicated process. There's a lot of information that goes into it, and providing that education to the community will only benefit us as well as them. Next year, we'll be implementing the Questica budgeting software, so look forward to that. There's some really great open and transparent items with respect to that budget process. It may not be implemented in 2021 for the 2022 budget. Those open and transparent aspects, it's budgeting open book. That'll be our second phase of implementation, but it's coming. It will be coming to this municipality, and that will only enhance our accountability and transparency, which is also important. At this point, I have completed the budget presentation. Here's my information to stay in touch. And I will open the floor to council for any questions.
This is the last chance. Is there anything you'd like to get clarified, ask about? No? Well, there isn't anything that anyone wants to ask you, but in closing, I want to add my thanks to you, Tiffany, for steering that ship through the process. I think it gets better every single year, and I really appreciate that leadership. I also want to thank the SLT for all of the work they do, and thinking and the discussion and the prioritization of everything to make sure that they're doing the best job they can in delivering service for the best possible value for our not constituents, residents in our municipality. I also want to thank our two council representatives who, it is kind of torture by, I don't know, what do accountants do? A million pen strokes. So appreciate your time and input into that process, and all of your comments that you made tonight. So that's valuable as well. I think the process gets better every year. I really appreciate the fact that we're getting increased numbers in terms of participants and feedback items, either emails or calls or participation in meetings. This year was a different year, but I still think it speaks volumes when we get better participation every year, I think. Not only do we get better ideas, but the comments and the feedback are really useful, I think, for staff. So the other part of it that I want to comment on is that every time I see a budget come through, I'm hearing things like there's ongoing improvement, there's continuous improvement and changing of ways of doing things and looking for improvements. And I think that speaks volumes about our team, and I think the councillors too that are participating in the process. If we keep doing this, our ship will keep floating. So thank you to everybody for all of this. It's a very long process, but we'll look forward to closing it off next meeting. Right now, the motion before us is that the operating budget for 2021, report number CPS 61 2020, presentation and draft booklet be received. Do I have a mover? Councillor Shipley, and seconded by Councillor Arts. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, so next I'd like to move on to the customer service expansion through the online payment options, the payment history overview, which Tiffany will again present for us.
Yes.
Back to you.
Yep, just one moment.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna pull it up on my screen. Okay, so perfect. So this council report is with respect to customer service expansion through the online payment options. We have looked at what other municipalities have implemented in this realm. Our municipal software, our accounting software is very limited with respect to its online presence as well. There are a lot of compliance issues and items that you need to keep in mind when you're adding another online service for our residents, especially when it deals with credit cards. So through that research, we have found that Paymentus Canada Corporation would be a great fit for Middlesex Center and what we would like to accomplish. This is something that would provide that online ability for our residents and businesses to pay their bills by credit card. They can pay online with a debit card as well. There is fees associated with this service, but it is paid for by the users, like strictly by the users of the service. So if you have a property tax bill that you would like to pay by your credit card, you will go on to the Paymentus site, which is linked onto our website. You will enter in your information, and if your bill was $1,000, the municipality, you would pay $1,000, and then it would show that you had this service fee that flows to Paymentus, and then you would pay the full amount. The municipality will only ever see the $1,000. The money that's being paid to Paymentus is separate than the money coming to us. And so what we would need to do in order to implement this is I'm working on the contract with the company as well. We'd be implementing it in probably January, February of 2021 to provide this option to our residents. And then on top of that, we would make sure that we're advertising it so that people know this is available. During the pandemic, we did have a lot of residents turn to the online options, and we do have many online options already that are available. However, this is just another one that we can provide that service to the community. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Council? I don't see any questions. So the motion before us then, bear with me, this is a little bit longer than normal, is that the report CPS 62 2020 regarding customer service expansion through online payment options, Paymentus, be received, and that council approve the addition of credit card payment solution for utility, building, general receivables, and property tax customers who choose to pay the associated convenience fee, with the potential to expand to other services upon review through a third-party provider, Paymentus, and that council delegate authority to the treasurer to execute all related service agreements with Paymentus Canada Corporation. And further, that a bylaw be passed to establish a service fee for payment card processing services attached hereto. The payment card processing service fee be charged in addition to the originating charge. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Scott, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, Tiffany. The next report is the fleet review and rationalization. I'm looking to Rob and I think Andrew as well.
Yep. Good evening again. So through Madam Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and give the presentation, and then both Andrew and myself will be available for her to answer questions. So the purpose of this report is really just to inform council and provide a couple recommendations, but to inform council of the review and analysis that we completed. Staff really want to, I guess, go through both the fleet and equipment thoroughly and look at the utilization that the different pieces of equipment we're getting, and to see if there's anything that could be disposed of or anything that should be shifted around to just really to optimize what we have. So one thing to note, I guess, is over the last few years, there have been a couple interdepartmental vehicle transfers that I don't know that they were always adequately captured when those transfers occurred. So this report also cleans those up, clearly identifying which pieces of equipment and or vehicles are located in which department and or division. So the analysis was taken or was undertaken by PWE admin staff, but with the support of staff from all the other departments and divisions. Andrew met with each department and went over their needs, both existing and future. That was incorporated into the 2021 budget cycle and really forecasting those fleet requirements over the next 5 years. As part of that too, he reviewed the average age of vehicles in each department, and we know that we're generally targeting an average age of 12 years for replacement. Some departments are a little bit ahead of that, some are a little bit behind, but in general, the overall age of the vehicles aligns well with that average age that we're targeting. Also, as part of the review, there was discussions just regarding the level of service that the various departments are receiving from PWE mechanics to ensure that their needs are being met both appropriately and in a timely manner. And all in all, the comments back were favorable, and it would seem that at this point that our staffing levels are appropriate to meet the current requirements. And we do note that as we continue to grow and we add additional fleet, or if fleet ages and there's a higher level of maintenance required, that there may be a need to outsource more repairs or eventually potentially bring in a third mechanic. At this point, we do outsource some repairs. Generally, we try to keep that to warranty work, but there are other repairs where it's just more efficient. If it's a specialized piece of equipment, or if there's a specialized electronic equipment for diagnosing that we may not have, and that type of thing would be outsourced. So acquisition and disposition is generally carried out by PWE on behalf of other departments, with some exception regarding emergency services, but we will continue to work with Colin to provide support as needed for that. And we will also continue to look at different methods to increase our efficiency or our pricing to receive more efficient pricing from different vendors. We have started using the LAS program this year, which is through AMO. There's also, I know like this year, for example, in 2021, we have a number of vehicle replacements that we will bundle those together to look for improved bulk pricing. And I've had some discussions as well with other local municipalities looking to see where we can provide or bundle tenders together, either for equipment or for other capital projects as well. So that's something that's also in the works. So the first table gives a good summary of the types of vehicles within each department, not to the level of specific vehicles, but just a summary of the different classifications of vehicles or equipment. So that provides a good breakdown. It's clear that the two largest departments are Public Works and then Community Services. So as this review was completed, kind of as expected, we found a few different pieces of equipment that we find are used very infrequently and are really of little or limited use to PWE. So we would like to proceed with disposal of those pieces of equipment and to capitalize on what revenue we can. The following page gives a summary of what we're looking to dispose of. So as far as equipment, it's really smaller scale equipment. Some older V plows, we have 7. We want to dispose of 5 and still retain 2 just because they don't get used, but still keep a couple for emergency situations if we require them. And then a couple of the bigger things are the trailer mounted generator and the trailer mounted air compressors. They both have very little runtime, and certainly we think that we can get some revenue by selling those. We just don't get the use out of them. And then some other smaller pieces of equipment as well. So one of the things that came out of these meetings and these discussions with Eric in Water and Wastewater, there was some discussion about whether or not he could adjust operations, and we're looking to see how that can be done to reduce the number of vehicles required in that department. So recently, and I think everybody will recall, and I know I had a bit of a discussion regarding the 2007 Ford Ranger that had been previously identified to be disposed of, and is still being used by Water Wastewater, although it's actually currently identified under the Transportation Department. It's a vehicle that is very versatile and useful to the Water Wastewater Department. But we do believe that we can actually reduce the number of vehicles in Water Wastewater by a vehicle. And so because of some other changes happening or being proposed within the Building Department, we're proposing to actually transfer the Chevrolet Bolt, which is currently in the Water Wastewater, to Building when a new staff member is hired, providing a third vehicle for them to use, and that we would sell off the Chevrolet Cruze and not replace it right now, but retain the 2007 Ford Ranger for another year. The reason is the Ford Ranger is just, like I said, is just a more versatile vehicle for them to use. And in the future with the Water and Wastewater Department, we would not be looking to purchase cars for their use. Small pickups or a small utility vehicle would just be more functional for the tools that they need to transport from site to site at times. So right now, we are recommending that the 2007 Ford Ranger be retained until 2002, at which time it will need to be replaced, and that the Chevrolet Bolt be transferred to Building Services to provide them with an additional vehicle, and that the Chevrolet Cruze would be disposed of. However, under the current circumstances with COVID-19 and the intent or approach to be physically distant and reduce touch points, we would like to hold on to the Chevrolet Cruze until sometime in 2021, until such time that the physical distancing or the current pandemic situation has lessened, and then sell it off before the end of 2021. Similarly, we're looking to get some additional use out of a vehicle that Community Services is replacing. They have acquired a replacement vehicle for a 2010 Dodge Ram, and that was intended to be disposed of by the end of this year, which we can still do if necessary. But it would be Public Works' desire to keep that vehicle for our use as a patrol vehicle on the weekends. The reason is that we have a different individual staff member who is doing the weekend patrols, and again, this would just help limit that interaction between employees and vehicles, and it would have the added benefit of putting a significant number of miles or kilometers on a vehicle that is about to be disposed of, instead of putting them on a newer vehicle. So now moving over to equipment. One item that we had in the capital budget was replacement of a loader in 2021. So we currently have 2 loaders, and that is very useful. That we generally would have one at Delaware, one at Denfield, and then bring them to sites as required. The loader that is to be replaced is a 2009 case loader, but we would recommend that loader be retained. It has a couple of different benefits. One, it provides us redundancy if one of the other loaders is down for repairs, because they are used so frequently, and they can be tasks can be undertaken with them that really can't be done with any other piece of equipment. It would also give us the benefit of having a loader, say, at one of the aggregate pits when we were doing work there, that loader could remain there in a locked up, because the pits are locked up, that it could remain there for the week or 2 weeks that we may be there, instead of roading it back and forth to the operations center and back to the pits every day. So there's a saving in both staff time and wear and tear on the loaders due to the amount of time on the road traveling from site to site. And it'd be a similar case when we're undertaking a capital project like a road reconstruction project, and we to have that additional loader available would be very helpful in those projects. Now, just a couple other things I would like to touch on is the sharing of equipment that has been occurring within departments or between departments. So there's a couple pieces of equipment that in particular have been shared between Public Works and Community Services. The one is the trackless sidewalk machine. We use it in the winter season for sidewalk maintenance, and Community Services uses it in the summer as a lawnmower. The second piece of equipment, which is a tractor, is kind of the alternate seasons where we use it in the summertime to cut roadside grass, and Community Services uses it in the winter for snow plowing. And then a third piece of equipment that would be added to that is, assuming that we receive budget approval for the 2021 purchase of a bucket truck, is that the majority of the time it would be used by Public Works, but we know that there certainly is a benefit to Community Services in either changing light bulbs or putting up banners or various different things that they've noted that it will be useful to them for as well. And then just in general, that staff, we will continue to work both within our department and other departments to find ways to be more efficient and optimize the use of existing fleet and future fleet. We'll continue to look at technology and different systems that may benefit the municipality in managing the fleet, the fleet we have now and fleet to come, and that we know that there'll be some legislative requirements that will require some use of technology to track such things as daily circle checks and whatnot. So we're doing that as well. Just very briefly on the financial implications of maintaining a couple of the vehicles, at least in part through the 2021 season. So the use of the Dodge Ram over the winter, we estimated that it would have an approximate cost of $2,500. Now, I would like to point out that I think we could have probably worded this a little bit differently, because if we're not using the Dodge Ram, we would be using a different vehicle to complete the patrols. So although there's going to be a cost on the Ram, there'll be savings on another vehicle. Similarly with the Ford Ranger, we estimated $7,000 for the year, which I believe to be on the high side. It had very, very little maintenance so far in 2020. I think in fact it was probably $150 in maintenance on it this year, but we've added some budget in there just in case there's something that needs to be done to get it through the year. And then as far as the disposition of assets, what we're proposing to dispose of is a little bit hard to say what we're going to get for dollar values, but they will be put on the public auction site, and we're quite sure that there will be some revenue generated there. There's further in the report. I won't go over them, but there are 3 different appendices that give the detailed breakdown. The first one is just the detailed breakdown of the departmental fleet. And then the second one is demonstrating what assets are proposed to be disposed of. And then the last appendix is just a revised fleet list once the interdepartmental transfers are completed, assuming approval. One thing I will note is that there's all the recommendations on the first page of the report. There will be one additional recommendation that I believe James will maybe read out, which is for the book value of the Chevrolet Bolt. I think it's about $35,000. That value would be moved from a reserve fund for building to the water wastewater reserve fund, in which then we could use in the future to purchase a replacement vehicle, say for the Ranger. And now we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that very thorough report. Does anyone need verification? Or yes, go ahead, Councillor Heffernan.
Through the mayor to Rob, I was just wondering about the disposition of those V plows. If we should happen to have a heavy storm next year, say, how will that leave us as far as getting roads clear?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and we had talked about that internally. Yeah, we felt that the retention of 2 of them was sufficient because they would really be a first pass down the road to open that up, and then we would come through with the standard plows after. So, speaking with current employees, I don't know if they could recall the last time they were used. And Andrew, I'm not sure if you want to add something, feel free.
Oh yes, Councillor Arts, please.
Through your mayor to Rob, we have 2 sidewalk machines, don't we? Like, do we share both of them with community services?
So through Madam Mayor, yeah, you are correct. We do have 2. Community services currently makes use of just the one. And I'm not sure that we have anything to outfit the second one with. If not to say it wouldn't be possible, but there'd probably be another purchase required to outfit that, like say for a more.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Well, thank you for that, Rob. Then I'll call the motion. And that is that council received the report Public Works Engineering 31-2020 regarding fleet review and rationalization, and the council approved the disposition of fleet assets identified in Appendix B in accordance with council policy. There are 6 paragraphs that follow, and the motion is that council either approve the disposition, approve temporary use, or retention and continued use, acquisition, transfer of various vehicles as printed in our agenda. Is there any motion? Councillor Scott and a seconder. Councillor Shipley.
Through the chair, just as a point of clarity, I'd just like to clarify that the motion referred to by the presenter does appear in the council agenda package. It has been posted publicly and all members of council have it before them this evening. Thank you.
And thank you for that clarification. I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you again. And I believe you are going to present now the water, wastewater, stormwater rate proposal. Floor is yours, Rob.
Okay. Thank you. So I know Tiffany referred to this already as she stole my thunder, but anyway, we'll work through this one. This one's definitely shorter. So the purpose here of this report is just to seek council's approval for the 2021 water, wastewater, and stormwater rates. And as you'll see, the recommendation is ultimately that there's very, very little change from 2020. So just touching on a couple of things briefly. So in 2015, BMA was engaged to do a long-range financial plan. That was touched on a little bit when we went through the budget tonight. That long-range financial plan will be undertaken again in 2021, and I'll allude to that a bit later as well. Out of that long-range financial plan, there was targets that were set for the rates based on a long-term plan to hit reserve levels. And the municipality has been making good progress in that regard. However, the update to the long-range plan in 2021 will be very useful going forward to essentially adjust the directory of the trajectory of those reserves and how quickly we can meet the desired levels. So one thing to note was that the rates were frozen from 2016 to 2019. And then last year, we recommended a relatively small increase for the year of 2020. So the rates that you see in this report identify the 2020 rates. And the one table I would like to point out, because it's going to be where the change is recommended, is that the second table that shows the 2020 rates for lots that are fronting but not connected to water or wastewater systems. And you will note that the total fixed monthly charge on those lots is significantly higher than what it is on lots that are connected. And we have received some feedback from residents on that. I've taken a look at it, and that'll be part of my recommendation coming up. So this year, we engaged BMA again to do another high-level review of the rates or proposed rates for 2021 and what their recommendation was for any changes based on what they were seeing in the operating and capital budgets. So they were provided that information on both budgets and that would also include looking at the long-range capital budget, like the 5-year plan. So BMA did come back with a couple of different options after looking at both the number of accounts and consumption trends. Now, this year is definitely a little bit of a different trend so far, presumably related to COVID, but we do also know that we have substantial growth within the municipality. And in budgeting on the operations side, I would say that we have been conservative, and what we're seeing is growth. So it is possible that the revenue side will come out more favorably in 2021 than what we have projected. But again, hedging that somewhat, unsure what COVID will yet bring. So one thing to note is and this is again kind of been touched on through the budget presentation, is that the 2020 projected ending balance for the reserves, for all 3 reserves, is in better shape than was projected in 2019 when we were looking forward to 2020. You can see a significant decrease proposed or projected in the year end for 2021 in the proposed revenues or reserves. And that's just simply due to some sizable projects that are proposed in 2020. And the stormwater reserve remains reasonably healthy, but we know that longer term, we have a significant project that's on the 5-year horizon. So BMA, after reviewing everything, they did come back with 2 different alternatives that they were proposing. One was one included a 1% increase on the water volumetric charge and a 2 3/4% increase on the wastewater charge. Looking at these in total, they would generate about another $66,000 in revenue. And their second option was just simply a small increase on the wastewater volumetric charge, which would result in about just under $18,000 increase in revenue. So looking at the reserves that are projected the transfer to reserves that are projected in 2021, we do see that the projection is $116,000 and $150,000 less than what was projected for 2020. So certainly there is the option to increase user fees to mitigate this reduction. But I think it's really important to point out that these reductions are very much in part because of the proposed master plans that are I think budgeted at about $125,000 a piece. And because that master plan is really, once a decade plan, that I don't see the need to increase the rates to compensate for that. And it is, I think, feasible to say that our revenues may be better in 2021 than projected because we've been on the conservative side. The other thing that we have that will be a benefit once it's complete is the Delaware interconnect and the disconnect from the City of London, where we'll see some cost savings as well. So considering the impacts of COVID-19 and the fact that the long-range financial plan will be completed in 2021, it's staff's recommendation that we do not change the water, wastewater, or stormwater rates for lots which are connected to the system. Stormwater would be applied even to ones that are not, but again, no change there. The only rate change that I am proposing is a reduction in the fixed monthly charge for those lots who front on but are not connected to the water or wastewater systems. And the next, I will just give you a kind of a quick rundown of what the impact of that is. So I have already identified that BMA's recommendations, the one scenario would generate about $66,000 in revenue, and the other 18. So obviously by not implementing those, we're foregoing that additional revenue. And then by reducing the fixed fee on the lots that are not connected, there would be a reduction in fixed monthly charges of about $8,000 on the water side and about $9,500 on the wastewater side. So for a net increase or net decrease of about $17,000 in revenue. I do feel that this is fair to bring this down to the level that connected lots see. And it is possible that at some point, say after the long-term financial plan, that there could be either increases or decreases in the fixed fee, which may still affect these lots. So just noting again that the 2021 update for the long range financial plan will look at the reserve funds, and it'll establish new goals for those reserves and the rate at which we should try to attain those. And this is likely to have could have a significant impact on the future water or wastewater rates. But that'll be established next year. And again, just identifying that the stormwater rates would be frozen this year, and that even at that level, that we are still contributing $384,000 to the reserve fund, to the stormwater reserve fund in the 2021 operating budget, and that after 2021, we are not anticipating to undertake any stormwater pond cleanouts for a handful of years at least. We'll continue to monitor them and check sediment buildup, but we'll have some reprieve from the cost of those cleanouts, which will obviously help us build that reserve fund for the other major project that needs to be undertaken. And then, so just in conclusion, BMA did complete a review which did recommend small increases, but it is staff's position that we maintain the rates for most users at the current 2020 rates and reduce the fixed fee rates for those who are fronting but not connected to the systems. And happy to open it up to any questions.
Thank you for the report. Are there questions for Rob? Councillor Scott.
Yes, through the Madam Mayor to Rob. So the lots that are not connected, so in 2020, that was the first year that we charged $95 for the wastewater and $41.
Through Madam Mayor, no, that price has been in place for a number of years, and I have to check, but it probably goes back to 2016. So those residents have been receiving that increased fee, or that higher fee on the fixed fee side for a number of years.
Okay, so they've been paying that for a few years already.
Yeah.
We're looking to reduce that down because of COVID.
No, it's a reduction because they're paying the infrastructure life cycle renewal cost, and they're paying the fixed base fee. They have no usage, so they're not paying any volumetric. But their fixed fee is substantially higher than what it is for a lot that's connected. I can only guess as to why it was set that way initially, but given that they're already paying the infrastructure lifecycle renewal fee, I guess in my opinion, I don't know that it's fair to continue to charge them a higher fixed rate when they're not actually using any water or contributing wastewater.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking for clarification. So I'm assuming we are encouraging them to hook up, but they don't have to.
That's correct. So there is the bylaw reads that they still have to pay these fees if they front it, because, and rightfully so, there is still a net benefit to their property, at least I believe, to their property value by having these services available to them. Which is where the fixed fee and the infrastructure lifecycle fee come in, but having no usage fee to them. So they're not required to hook up because the way the bylaw reads, but certainly they were encouraged to, which may be part of why this rate structure was developed in the beginning.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for that clarification.
I have a question, Rob. If I may, if I recall, we're talking probably less than 3 dozen users in the municipality. I don't even think it's that many.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I didn't highlight that. So it's 37 on the water, and it's only 12 on the wastewater.
Thank you. Wow, I remembered. Anything else no? Very well. Then we have a motion before us that the 2021 water, wastewater, and stormwater rates remain unchanged from the 2020 water, wastewater, and stormwater rates, with the exception of lowering the fixed monthly water and wastewater charge for lots not connected to the system. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Scott and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on now to Tiffany to provide the procurement of goods and services policy.
Perfect. So through you, Mayor DeVete, the policy in front of you is our new proposed new procurement of goods and services. This would be adopted for January 1st, 2021. The older municipal procurement of goods and services was last updated in June of 2016, and the policy requires that staff review it every 5 years. We didn't provide a red line version of our original policy, as we have made significant changes, and our templates and the style has changed with respect to our policies. So I will outline some of the notable changes. Specifically, this is within my council report, but some of the things I'd like council to really pay attention to with respect to the changes. The threshold for the request for tender has decreased from $125,000 to $100,000. And we have added a clause for the CAO to have authority to approve proceeding with the project if the cost of the bid is over budget, as long as the amount over is $50,000 or less. Otherwise, it would come to council. It is important to remember within this that department director must have those budgeted funds available. So they must be cutting in other areas in order to make that work. The threshold for the 3 quotes has increased from $20,000 to $35,000, and you'll see the main changes are things that are coming to council for approval. And we have increased a lot of and expanded on a lot of sections that may not have been included in our original policy, such as our performance evaluation form. So a new section has been added, a form has been created so that any contractor that is doing work above $100,000 is evaluated, and this would give us information on those contractors to be able to use it for the future, whether if we wanted to exclude someone, there would be actual evidence as to why they would be excluded. And this is also will help us manage our expectations and work with those contractors on what our expectations are. The disposal of goods section was added. So when the municipality presently we dispose of goods, it is by auction, whether an online auction or an auction house. And we do advertise this, but it's been expanded and included in an actual policy. The forms of security was expanded to be more clear. And the legal requirements section was expanded, including additional information on trade agreements and conflict of interest. We've also added some more appendices, specifically the levels of contract approval authority and signing authority was added for clarity purposes. There's also more on segregation of duties for controls around procurement. There's a list of bid irregularities and actions so that anyone who may be excluded or rejected, their bid may be rejected. There's actual part of our policy that explains this to them, and it's very clear. We expanded the list of goods and services not covered by the policy to be more we compared to other municipalities and more in line of what the municipality is presently doing. We added a sustainability aspect to the procurement, a dispute resolution, and we added information on our new e-bidding process and program. So the municipality right now for our procurement, we use Bid and Go, and they are posted on there, but the manual, it's still manual submissions into the municipal office, where the new platform that we will be using in January 2021 is Bids and Tenders. And what we'll be looking at doing is having even the tender document submitted electronically. This is more transparent. It also has a quicker turnaround for those bidding to find out what the results would be, and it'll streamline that process and be one of those efficiencies that we spoke about during the budget. Another big change that I want to bring to council's attention, at the recommendation of our legal counsel as well as our insurance company, specifically the general commercial liability has increased to $5 million from $2 million, and so this would be a change going forward for those new contracts. So at this time, what we've done is we've placed the procurement of goods and services policy on the agenda and the report, but we have had pulled the bylaw to go to council on December 16th. So it gives council a little bit more time to absorb this policy because it is pretty comprehensive, a lot of information there. And I am open to questions at this time, as well as in the next week or so.
Other questions for Tiffany now? Councillor Heffernan?
Through the mayor to Tiffany. The one part that I was concerned with is that if it's over 100,000 and the lowest bid or whatever is 50,000 more, then the CAO has full authorization to approve that. Nothing against you, Michael. But I was thinking, okay, so if we have a tanker truck or a fire truck for 450,000, to approve 50,000 more is about just under or just over 10%. So that's not a big deal given the base amount. However, if it was something like 100,000 and you approve 50, then that's like 50%. So like the total cost be 150. That would be like a 50% authorization. And I'm just wondering if that should be maybe changed to 50,000 or like maximum 50,000 or 10%, whichever is less, or 20%, even 20% would cover, you know. I was just thinking that it just seems like a wide discrepancy if you have wide projects like you know, costing. Anyway, that's my thought.
Through you, Mayor DeVete, I actually do think that's a great idea. We had something similar in one of the original drafts, and we did decide on the 50,000. But you bring up a really great point with respect to a project that is just 100,000. That 50,000 is 50% of those costs. So what we can do is to add in something to the effect of the CAO can approve to the lesser of $50,000 or 20% of the project cost or the budgeted project cost. And if council is comfortable with that, we can make that change in the policy to be included in the final draft going on December 16th.
Someone want to comment or weigh in? Okay. But I think if if Tiffany's willing to make that change, and I don't see anyone, then I think we can nod and smile. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I have one, Tiffany. This is sort of a practical question with respect to the bid and go and the tender platforms that we're using. Can you comment? Are they? Is the reach of the number of subscribers or the population that looks at them equal, or would most people say doing tendering on something that we do go to all of the sites and look at all of those and then choose to tender or not?
So through you, Mayor DeVete, based on my information that I've received from, say, EMOP, so one of our cooperative purchasing groups, so this is one of the groups that we attend, I have heard positive for both bid and go and bids and tenders. There has been a move for many to move towards the bids and tenders platform. My understanding is that it does reach a lot of different businesses and contractors, and that they are both widely used. I would actually want to maybe pull Director like Rob in from the Director of Public Works and Engineering, or Scott. They utilize the platforms a lot more, and they might, as they manage more of the contracts, they might have more information from some of the contractors' feedback with respect to the services. I know we did internally look at the switch to bids and tenders, and there was a lot of benefits internally. But externally, I think, I believe there was as well. But if one of you would like to speak to it.
You're so right. And Director Mares has his hand up.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, we've been using Bidingo or Bidingo. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. They pronounce it a bunch of different ways for a number of years now. And Tiff is right. I think a lot of municipalities are transitioning over to bids and tenders. But in kind of working with the contractors, I believe they carry both subscriptions for the small investment that it is for these contractors. I believe it's $220 a year for Bidingo and $160 for bids and tenders. They just carry that as an operating cost, so that it gives them, much more exposure to the various contracts that might be thrown out there, so they don't miss that opportunity. Because there is a bit of a split. There's still a number of contracts being posted on Bidingo. There's nothing wrong with that platform. Bids and tenders is more of the municipal kind of where the municipalities are going. But that's my involvement with it so far, and I'll leave it to Rob as well if he has any further comments.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in, but I think they largely echo your experience too. I'd say both on the contractors and the consultant side. When I was still in my previous life, I couldn't tell you the last time I pulled an RFP off of Bidingo. Generally, it was all through bids and tenders, and I'd say there's more and more municipalities going that way. But like Scott said, that the cost is relatively small, so certainly there would be a large proportion, I think, that would carry both.
And I would also add, I think the reach is quite far. When we look at even on as we're using Bidingo, when we look at the plan takers that are when we go to the list of those who have downloaded the RFP or the tender, depending on the project, you could get we had 50 contractors at our site visit for the Ilderton Library Edition, which was, thankfully that was before COVID. We would have been illegal otherwise. But so the reach is quite far, and we do get a lot of experienced contractors that we may not necessarily know of locally, but they're not too far out the geographical kind of realm. So it definitely has been worthwhile going in that route.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, in that case, the motion before us is that report CPS 65/2020 regarding procurement of goods and services policy be received, and that the procurement policy appended to the report CPS 65/2020 be approved. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Arts and Councillor Heffernan. Oh, do we have to note that as a part of a clause? Yes. Okay, so the wording will be along the lines of, and it will include the amendment as directed to staff. Okay? Yeah. Yes, we agreed that we wanted to do that. So Councillor Arts and Councillor Heffernan. Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much for that, Tiffany. Moving on to correspondence. We have 4 items on our list tonight. Is there any comment or question or observation on anything there? Seeing no hands, then the motion is that the correspondence items 9.1 through 9.4 listed on December 2nd council agenda be received for information. Councillor Scott and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We have not had a council meeting at the county. They'll be coming up again next time. So there's no update from our deputy. Is there any other business that anyone wants to raise? Seeing none, then our next step is our motion to adopt the bylaws, and that is that bylaws 2020-100 through 101 listed on the December 2nd, 2020 council agenda be adopted as printed. 2020 number 100 being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Municipality of Middlesex Centre to authorize service fees for payment card processing services, and 2020-101 being a bylaw to adopt and confirm all actions and proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Middlesex Centre at the council meeting held on December 2nd, 2020. A mover, please. Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Shipley, all in favor? That's carried. And a motion to adjourn. The Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourns the December 2020 meeting at 8:41 p.m. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Scott, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.